Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church Fade to Black.
Yeah, man. What did MC say? MC said, "How you doing?" Oh man, I'm so excited. Beside myself, Jim Mars, standing backstage behind the curtain. Doesn't get any better than that, does it? How you doing, everybody? This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Wednesday, September 3rd. We are 245 days into the new year. We are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in sunny, roasting hot gates of hell, Burbank, California. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your humble host, Jimmy Church. Let's light it up tonight. It's going to be great. I say it every night, but this is another one. Day 3 of Third Reich week here. Fade to Black. Tonight, Jim Mars. We're talking about his book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich. The secret societies that threaten to take over America. Yeah. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world, fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. There's no freedom of speech. And right now, CWM 1955, Charles, could not tweet into this show. I need you to think about it. Ken Libson comes in with Jim effing Mars. You damn straight. Today, Sex Pistols guitarist Steve Jones is 59 years old. Steve Jones, 1995, him and Duff McKagan had a band called the Neurotic Outsiders. I was working with GNR back then on Chinese, and Duff had that thing going on the side with Steve. Steve's a really cool dude. And I'll tell you a quick story. I'm going to do this really quick. Since we're at the top of the show, I've got a little bit of time. I can cheat. I was up at Jonesy's house up in the Hollywood Hills. He used to have a place off of Hutton. I don't know if he still has that place, but really cool little place up in the hills. And so we're sitting in his living room one night, and he goes, "Jimmy, you want to hear my dog sing?" I'm like, "What?" And he had a pit bull. And he brings the pit bull over next to him in the chair, and he takes out this guitar and starts like strumming a G chord, ring, 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 then C, ring, 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 D, ring, ring, D, G, G, G. And this dog tore off into the Barber of Seville. In pitch, too. Every chord change. And so I think of Steve and all of that God Save the Queen stuff and Sex Pistols, all that greatness. Never mind the Bullocks, all that greatness. And that's not what I think about. I think about his singing pit bull. Steve Jones, 59 years old. Check this out. Today, Drummer Don Brewer is 66 years old. And you're asking yourself, who is Don Brewer? Who, Jimmy, educate us. Who is Don Brewer? You know Don Brewer. Don Brewer was the drummer who played for Grand Funk Railroad. But it wasn't his drumming that made him so great. It was the group's first #1 hit single, We're an American Band, written by him, produced by Todd Rundgren, by the way, but sung by Don Brewer. That's right. #1 song, threw that band into super band status, and it was sung by Don Brewer rather than Mark Farner. And to this day, Don Brewer, 66 years old, great song. And today, I just happened to go through and I went, and I just wanted to see, because that song was covered by everybody. So I go and I jump on Wikipedia, punch it in. You know, of course, that song has its own Wikipedia page. And there's a list of everybody that covered that song. And everybody covered that song. Now, aside from that, there was a band called Americade that covered the song. I was like, Americade? I remember that band. That's the band that Walt was in. The drummer, Walt Woodward, friend of mine here in LA. And so I click on that, and then I click on Walt, and I find out that Walt died in 2010. Walt Woodward III. And he, here in LA, everybody that's listening to me right now will always remember a band from the Strip back in the 80s. And I'm going to say 84, 85, right at the peak of the Sunset Strip. There was a band called Sweet Savage. They were a monster band. They were awesome. But Walt was the drummer for Sweet Savage, and he left Americade, which was a big band on MTV. Left Americade, like a New York band or something, New Jersey, New York. Came out here and joined Sweet Savage. We became friends right after that, but I lost track of him probably 10, 15 years ago, and but found out that he died in 2010. And it's weird how things happen like that, you know? Talking about Don Brewer, his birthday, and it leads to that. You know, it was kind of bizarre. So anyway, Walt, found out today, brother. Hope all is well. My Aunt Z yesterday passed away. And so may she rest in peace. She's in a better place, but Aunt Z certainly influenced everybody in my family. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And when you hear me talk on this show about my crazy mom and the Ouija board and the Edgar Cayce books, it was Aunt Z that was right next to her doing all of that stuff growing up. And she lived a long, long life. And she passed away yesterday. So there you go, to the entire Falsing family and the church family. Aunt Z was an absolute wonderful woman. I am not sad. She was absolutely great and influenced everybody in our family in the most positive of ways, and certainly had the most amazing Christmas trees ever. So enough of that. Aunt Z, you were the best. Okay, let's move on. Today is day 3 of Third Reich week. Tonight, Jim Marrs will be talking about his book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich. Follow us on Twitter. I was talking to Jim right before the show, and so he's got some family members on Twitter. So they're going to be checking us out tonight. So let's light up Twitter for Jim Marrs. All right, you want to follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio, #DMRadioNet. Come over, hang out with all of us. I think last night we ran. No joke. We ran something like 2,000 tweets in three different categories over 2.5 hours. I saw those numbers after the show. And yeah, just my personal stuff was 497 tweets, and I only did 2. I feel bad about that. I can't keep up. I really can't. I read everything. It is so distracting. It's wonderful, but just watching it go through, I do. I try to keep up. I really do. And let's rock it tonight for Mr. Mars. And I will open up the lines tonight. I don't know how we're going to do this, but I do have, I'm holding it in my hand right here. I have one copy autographed of The Rise of the Fourth Reich, and I'm opening it up, and Jim has signed it right there on the title page. Very cool. Yes, I've read a little bit of it. I couldn't help myself. And it is a thick book too. How many pages? 430 pages with the really small type, not the books that I like to read with the big type. This is one of those smart books. So we have that. I'm going to try to figure out a way to give this away tonight. Let's give it away to a first-time caller, no matter what. Okay. All right. So I have that. We will do that later on tonight. Email throughout the show. Got a bunch of stuff ready to go already for Jim. Email me, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can also go over to the website if you wish, to the contact page. And you can email there. Tomorrow night, don't forget, Fader Night. Oh, my goodness. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. You know what? I've got a bunch of email here. I've got a couple of things I want to talk to you about after the break as well. But let me see if I can squeeze in. Okay, you know what? I was going to do this after the break. I'm going to warm you up in Twitter. You guys ready? You guys ready? All right, this is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to do a little dance on Twitter. Tonight, we're going to play Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. And the winners tonight, I've got a whole bunch of autographed Space Boy CDs. So that means Space Boy cannot participate. Or if he wins, he's going to donate. And how do we play Genius or Luckiest Man Alive? How do we do it? No. Eugene. No, you are incorrect, sir. We did not do Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. I mentioned Luckiest Man Alive. That's a whole different thing. The real game is called Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. Let me give you an example of Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. Okay, are you ready? Sylvester Stallone. Genius or Luckiest Man Alive? Think about that. Let me give you another example of Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons. Genius or Luckiest Man Alive? Jeremy May just comes back with Luckiest Man Alive. Who? Okay, you got to say who, though. You got to say who. Who are you talking about? Rocky won? Okay, is that luck, though? That's what I'm trying to say. Farnsworth was a fool. Genius or Luckiest Man Alive? Paul Kalkbrenner. Yes. Gene Simmons. Jeremy May comes back with Genius. Can't be that ugly and score so much. Yeah. Okay. So Sylvester, Genius, Gene Simmons, Lucky. Now you guys know how to play the game. Exactly. So let me help you out with another one. Mick Jagger. Genius or Luckiest Man Alive? Think about that. You could put anybody in the Rolling Stones in that category. Genius or luckiest man alive. Now, I've started it. Mick is both. I've started it. Now, I want to see you guys end this. Give me another example of genius or luckiest man alive. I just gave you 3. And everybody is arguing about this, like you should, because all 3 of those examples are pretty easy. Think about that. We're going to play genius or luckiest man alive tonight. I think we'll do it every Wednesday. Maybe we'll save this also. Maybe we'll do, everybody's coming back with Mick is both. Betty Oliver, genius. Jim Henson, well, no, it's genius or luckiest man alive. Jagger is an idiot. I love it. I do. I love it. All the guests this week, by the way, are guest requests that came in from you guys. So never forget that. Always. I've got a flood of really cool guest requests that came in this week. And just do that to Jimmy or Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. All right. Oh, Art Bell, genius or luckiest man alive? Coming in from Michael K. Can we do that? Ooh. Oh, Mick Schwartz comes back with Jimmy Church, genius or luckiest man alive. I'll tell you right now, I'm the luckiest man alive. I'll help you with that. Will Chamberlain, Robert A. Knight. That's a good one, actually. That was actually pretty good. All right, let's get to the break. Genius or luckiest man alive? Stir the pot. Keith is genius. Jagger is lucky. Wow. Wow. That's good stuff. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Tonight, Jim Mars. Shoot me an email to Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. You do want to follow us over on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Light it up. Come hang out in the sandbox. Hashtag DMRadioNet. If you are listening to me right now, I'm telling you what you want to do is come and hang out with us on this show. Ron Jeremy. Genius or lucky. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, check this out. Check this out. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Donna Colvin just came in with Madonna, genius or luckiest man alive. Madonna, that's a good one. Michael Jackson, Madonna, I'm going with genius. Michael Jackson, I got to go with genius. Got to with that one. That's a good one. I knew George Norrie was going to pop up here. Somebody had to go with George as being the luckiest man alive. But you know what? He's on the air, and I agree with that. So there's some genius involved. Genius or luckiest man alive? Charlie Sheen. Wow, that's a good one. Didn't think about that. Charlie Sheen, that's a good one. You know what? Today's his birthday, by the way. Just to let you know. I'm doing some stuff here in the studio. Sorry about that. I'm turning my head, breaking every FCC rule. All right. A couple of things. I got a phone call today before we went on the air. Happened to pick it up from Roberto Garcia out in Oxnard. And he tells me that, amongst other things, he's owned a mortuary out there for 36 years. And he also owns a restaurant called the Thomas Cafe and Gallery. And he goes, Jimmy, you've got to come out here to my restaurant and have lunch because I have a 30-foot mural, 30-foot by 15-foot mural that goes along the entire wall of the restaurant that I painted 5 years ago. You have to come out and see it. And I go, what's going on, man? He goes, I did it subconsciously. I did it, but it's your underwater base. I go, what? He goes, yeah. I saw everything. This is a businessman. He's talking to me straight up. And I saw everything on the Malibu base, and I saw it online, and I went, holy crap, that's my mural that's on the wall. So he is sending me a picture of the mural. And he says, you are not going to believe what is on my wall and what you have published online. It's going to freak you out. And he said, I did it 5 years ago. It's in Oxnard. Now, for everybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, Oxnard is right inland a few miles. It depends by the crow flies or if you're on a road. But, 10 miles maybe inland from the underwater base. But he's right there. When I flew out to the base, we took a flyby to Camarillo Airport, which is right there in Camarillo, Oxnard. It's right there. It's like a 3-minute flight, but absolutely incredible. So he's going to send me, this happened 15 minutes before the show. So this happened about a half hour ago. We've exchanged emails, and we should have that going. I can't wait to see it. He says, I'm going to lose my mind. He's lost his. He's freaking out. So I hear a little bit of that wind. You guys hear that? You guys hear that? Wow, that's trippy sounding. Wow. And we are in a sealed studio. Where is that coming from? It just died away. You gotta love it. This email came in from Ken Beck. He says, I had only seen this on Above Top Secret until today. This is a little scary. By the way, the lights in the Pacific have to be something more incredible than volcanic activity, which would have been too deep to see from the surface. And I stopped and I thought about that. He's absolutely right. If that was, if that's hundreds and hundreds of feet under the water or thousands of feet volcanic activity, you wouldn't see that from the surface. Those lights are just under the surface. And that freaked me out. And I didn't even think about that. I don't know why I was thinking volcanic stuff, but yeah, wow, flip me out. So then he goes on to say, he sends me a link about the militias that took over the planes in Libya. And so I get the email, and then today I had to, I was driving around listening to KFI, which is the big AM radio station here in L.A., and I'm listening to it's talk radio, and they were talking about this article. Now, the article, first off, the article is on RT, and I started to hear reports about this, but you just never know, if there's foundations of truth. But this is from RT, or this is from the Washington Times. Islamist militias in Libya, militias in Libya took control of a nearly dozen commercial airliners last month And the Western intelligence agencies recently issued a warning that the jets could be used in terrorist attacks across North Africa. Intelligence reports of the stolen jetliners were distributed within the U.S. government over the past 2 weeks and included a warning that one or more of the aircraft could be used in an attack later this month on the anniversary of September 11th. Before I even say what I want to say, what I'm thinking is, how could we just lose jets? Yeah, right. It's possible, isn't it? This email came in from Lee Moynihan. He says, Jimmy, on show 114, you said Roswell was 75 years old. Well, 1947 and 75 would make it 2022. Maybe America is in the fear, and we're not in the backwater places like here in Australia. Take serious care when investigating the Malibu base. Can you record what you do and play it on your show? Watch for FBI goons dressed up as sharks. Your show is number one on the Central Coast here in Australia. Thank you for that. We all know we love our Australian brothers. Yeah, when this is how my brain works. When I had said that it was 75 years old, I was thinking, okay, we're at 2014, 1947. That's 70 years, plus or minus. That's why I said 75. I never did the math. I apologize. So how many years is it correctly? What is it, 68? All right, so Roswell's 68 years old. I stand corrected, and there we go. We've done our editorial edit and apology. Something else was sent to us from Renee, and I heard this also on many news outlets, and I don't know how to take this, and it's about fake cell phone towers. Have you heard about this? More than a dozen fake cell phone towers could be secretly hijacking Americans' mobile devices in order to listen in on phone calls or snoop on text messages. A security-focused cell phone company claims, and this is from Popular Science, ESD America, CEO Les Goldsmith, and I've read that, and that sounds like the fakest name I've ever heard. He could be a real guy. But anyway, recently said that the company has used its phone, the Cryptophone 500, and that just doesn't sound right. Could be real. I haven't checked it out. To map 17 different fake cell phone towers dubbed interceptors across the United States. Locations include New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, and more. This is a quote, interceptor use in the U.S. is much bigger than people had anticipated, he told the website. One of our customers took a road trip from Florida to North Carolina, and he found 8 different interceptors on that trip. We have found one at the South Point Casino in Las Vegas. Although these interceptors act as fake cell phone towers, they are not necessarily large, physical, big, gnarly cell phone towers that you see on the street. They could simply be small devices in briefcases, stuff like that. And they deceive phones into giving up information. Such devices are known as stingrays, after the brand name of a popular type of interceptor, which is called a stingray. Once connected to a person's phone, they can bypass all of the encryption data that is on the cell phone itself and potentially listen to cell phone conversations directly and also intercept your text messages. I am going to look into this a little bit further and see if this report is actually accurate. There's something about this that doesn't seem right, and it just bugs me. And the reason why I'm telling you this now is if you read this, dig a little deeper. Dig a little deeper. Something just doesn't seem right about it. I'm suspicious. Les Goldsmith, the Cryptophone 500. It just bothers me. Just bothers me. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, Jim Mars, day 3, Third Reich week, right here on Fade to Black. Sit tight, everybody. Get comfortable. When I come back after the break, we'll have Jim Mars with us. And don't forget, tomorrow night is Fader Night, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'll be back right after this. Don't touch that mouse. I'll be right back.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You want to hashtag DM RadioNet? Come hang out with all of us tonight in the sandbox. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. We've got a bunch of email lined up already for Mr. Mars. Sounds cool, doesn't it? Mr. Mars. Jim Mars is a Texas journalist and author of 4 New York Times best-selling books. His latest book is The Rise of the Fourth Reich, concerns all of the secret societies that threaten to take over North America. After a leave of absence from his newspaper job, he went to serve with the 4th Army Intelligence Unit during the Vietnam War. He became a military and aerospace writer and an investigative reporter. Mars has appeared on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, C-SPAN, and the Discovery Channel, Learning Channel, History Channel, Good Morning America, Geraldo, Montel Williams, Today, Tech TV, Larry King Live, and you know what? Also, our good friends George Norrie and Art Bell. Oh, let's throw in Alex Jones and Jeff Rentz for good measure. I would like to welcome back to the program our good friend Jim Mars. Jim, how are you tonight, sir?
Well, I'll let you know as soon as I find out. No, I'm doing all right.
You're doing all right.
As we say here in Texas, I'm tolerable.
You're tolerable. You said you bit your tongue yesterday. You going to be able to make it tonight?
I hope so. That was so dumb. I was eating, and I choked, and I coughed, and bit my tongue all at the same time. And I want to tell you, you have to be a hardened veteran to do something like that.
You know what I did? I didn't mention this on the air. About 2 weeks ago, I put a plate in the microwave that had some silver leaf on it, around the edges, right?
That's a no-no.
Yeah, exactly. 30 seconds in the microwave. I spin around. I'm in the kitchen doing my thing. I reach around and I open up the microwave and I reach in and grab the edge of the plate. And in the pain, the warning that goes up your arm and into your brain at that moment was instantaneous. I jerked myself back. My skin, my hand, my finger, my middle finger and my thumb were burned and stuck to the plate. I pull it out.
Probably going to leave a little mark reminding you not to do that again.
Oh, man. So I freak. I go over, I throw on the water and put my arm under there. And I'm just, the smell, I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. Well, anyway, I slept that night with my hand in a bucket of ice. That's how I went to bed. I had my hand in a bucket of ice all night.
All right. Well, let me show you what we do down here in Texas, out in the wilds and wild rural North Texas where I live, and everything around you either sticks or cuts or scrapes. Okay, and for all of that, what you need to do, this is a good tip for everybody that's listening. get you a little aloe vera cactus and keep it in your kitchen window. And as long as you just every now and then remember to give it a little water, it'll probably do just fine. And if you get a burn or a cut, or it's sometimes even just skin eruptions, skin problems, if you tear off a piece of that aloe vera and rub that oil onto it, it'll stop the hurting and it'll heal twice as fast.
I had nothing but ice.
That's why you want to keep a little aloe vera.
Yeah, I searched the house. I was hoping we had some aloe vera. Couldn't find it. And, I mean, I was, wow. I haven't burned myself like that in years, and I forgot.
If you hadn't got aloe vera, I guess the next best thing is exactly what you did, put some ice on it.
You know, and what was funny was the microwave didn't spark or bark or bounce or make noise or anything. Nothing like that happened. The funny thing is, if I would have looked in the microwave before I opened it, the silver leaf was probably glowing red.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not kidding, man. It was probably just glow.
I'll tell you what, I've been doing some research on that for a new book. And by the way, just to clarify the record, I'm not going to call you down. My latest book is Our Occulted History.
Oh, that's right. I have that downstairs.
And you knew that, Jimmy.
Yes, I did.
I did. It out in California.
I have it. I grabbed this one because I was giving this one away tonight, and that is my bad. Yeah, well, you did. You just threw me under the bus, Jim. And we talked. We talked about that. You were telling me about the new book, and we talked about it for so long. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I apologize for that.
So anyway, researching even the newest one, which is probably be out next year sometime, I've been looking into radiation and microwave radiation, cell phone radiation, and microwaves, and we really don't know what it's going to do to us in the long term. You know, all that's so recent. They haven't been using microwave, personally in homes for, about 20 years or so. And I don't think anybody knows for absolutely certain what all of this electromagnetic energy that's flowing all around us. I mean, we tend to forget about it because you can't see it or hear it or smell it. But right now there's a symphony orchestra playing. And you say, what? Just turn on the radio and turn to your classical station, and there it is. Those electromagnetic frequencies are in the air, and they're bombarding us 24/7, 365 days a year. And to be real honest, I don't think anybody knows for sure what that's doing to us physically, mentally, spiritually. Who knows?
Well, do you remember that wave of Bluetooth headsets that everybody had with their cell phones, and everybody walking around with the Bluetooth in their ear? I did that for a little while, and I thought to myself, this can't be healthy.
Well, it's a radio transmitter receiver. How safe can it be?
On your brain.
Right.
On your brain.
Yeah, right next to it.
Just locked on Bluetooth. The signal is always going to your phone, and so many people, myself included, I went through a little phase where I put that thing on in the morning and didn't take it off until I went to bed because I wanted to A, look cool, and B, drive in the car without getting pulled over. Right? So there was that advantage to it, but it couldn't be healthy. There's just no way. I'm with you on that.
But that's what happens when you live in the modern society. We're daily bombarded with bad electromagnetic frequencies and bad air and bad water. Bad entertainment. Have you ever thought about that, Jimmy?
My cousin and his wife are looking at a house right now out here in the valley, and it's right underneath, nice house, but right underneath some power lines.
Oh my God.
Now, would you ever, I remember hiking up in the mountains behind Pasadena, and there's a line of electrical towers that go across, and I remember standing underneath, and when you're up on the mountain there, those wires are tens of feet above your head. It's not like they're 100 feet up. I mean, it's 20, 30 feet above you, and you can hear them. You can just sit there and listen to them crackle, and buzz, and there's just no way. I would never own a house underneath anything like that.
I saw that out here recently. There was a huge, big microwave tower about a mile or two down the road. Somebody came along and right under it built this really nice, beautiful, modern little ranch-style house, and I'm just going, oh, those poor people. They think they've got such a good deal here, and they're probably going to wonder why they can't get any sleep in their new house.
I'm lucky. My home is, although next to a train station, but I can deal with that.
That's amazing. You can get used to that. Actually, I had a cousin down in East Texas, used to go visit all the time. The train tracks ran right kind of behind his house there. Every night about 1, 2 in the morning, and he'd come through, and they'd blow the stupid horn, But then I find out it's some kind of regulation, when they get to certain crossings, they have to blow the horn. And
Rita has said to me many times when that train comes by at 1:05 in the morning, I'm writing our congressman. That's it. That's it. We didn't. Really? Yeah, we didn't. When we bought the house, we obviously looked at the house a few times when there were no trains. And
well, if you buy a house and then they move something into you, like a train next door or something, then I think you have room to complain. But what I've never understood is in Dallas-Fort Worth, there's some airports right in the middle of the town. There's the used to be Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, and of course Love Field in Dallas, and people come and buy homes right next to them. And then pretty soon they start complaining about the noise. And I've always thought, well, you know what? You didn't think about that before you moved in next to an airport?
Yeah, here in Burbank, obviously the flight path, Burbank is right in the middle of everything. And the flight path for
Can't
landing.
Help but go over residential.
Right, it goes all the way across the valley. But Burbank shuts down at 10 o'clock at night. There's no flights overnight. And then they kick off in the morning at like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. Then the flights continue. But Burbank has got severe ordinances on that. A couple of things. Over the years, I used to live in that flight path. And at 10 o'clock at night, you would, but at 10:05, just silence. But when they were developing the SR-71, Lockheed Skunk Works was there at Burbank Airport. So the U-2, the SR-71, those were built.
Blackbird,
those were done right there in Burbank, and they would test fire those engines sometimes at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock in the morning. And everybody in Burbank is used to dead silence, right? And they'd fire. Could you imagine how loud those engines were? With the SR-71, and they're trying to do this top secret program right in downtown Burbank, and then it was later disclosed years later. Ben Rich, when he wrote his famous book Skunk Works, great book, and I'm sure you've read it. He said, we did all kinds of things we wouldn't tell the city of Burbank about. They had no idea the amount of top secret, ultra secret jet fuel that we had stored there illegally. And
toxic.
Toxic. And if that ever went up in smoke, Burbank would go with it. And they would do all kinds of things like that. And
you hear this all the time. There's stuff like that floating around here. I grew up in Fort Worth, and that's where, when I was growing up, the SAC, Strategic Air Command, that was the headquarters there at Carswell in Fort Worth. And going back into the 40s, since they were the headquarters for SAC, they had some atomic weapons there. And the old story goes, and I've never been able to confirm this, is that before they knew all the risk of radiation, they had some waste and some stuff left over from these nuclear weapons. They didn't know what to do with it, so they went and dumped it in Lake Worth, which is right next to their base.
Oh, no.
And the thing is, we know better now, but if you'll remember, when they first started testing those atomic bombs, they'd take our troops, our guys in uniform, and march them up to within a few hundred yards and tell them, now don't look at the blast, because they really didn't know about radiation at that point. But then they finally learned, and
here's a pair.
But my point being that they're doing stuff today that, 50 years from now, they're going to go, holy crap, did we really do that? That was terrible.
Yeah, here's a pair of goggles.
Yeah. Or I remember in school, they say, now, be sure and hold some papers over your head to catch the fallout.
Yeah, I don't know if I would assume that you would have to be over the age of 50 or certainly 45 and older to remember the nuclear drills that we did in the 60s and 70s. I think it kind of trailed off.
The old duck and cover.
Yeah, the duck and cover. I don't remember hearing...
I don't remember doing that in high school, really.
Yeah, high school.
Maybe we did some.
Yeah, exactly.
But then by the late 60s, 70s, I don't think we were doing that.
Yeah, we had that. The sirens would go off. The civil defense sirens would go off, and they would march us out into the hallway, and we would have to do the duck and cover in the hallway. Sometimes we did duck and cover under our desk, like that was going to help you from.
I remember what we always joked about it. We said, okay, now you get in a squatting position and you put your hands behind your head and then you bend over and kiss your butt goodbye.
I kind of miss the civil defense sirens, and I remember seeing them on towers all over town. What did they do? Did they cut those down? I don't see them anywhere here in Los Angeles.
Some of them they cut down. Some of them are still there. They actually... in South Turn County, down near Granbury, where we have a nuclear power plant, they still have some in that area, and they have tested them from time to time in case there is a nuclear accident or a spill or meltdown or whatever.
Right. Well, in the Midwest...
I don't think they're all totally gone.
Well, they use them for tornadoes. I know that.
Yeah, and tornadoes. Yeah, that's true. I live in Tornado Alley, and we still have.
So you hear them fire off once in a while?
Yeah, every now and then. Of course, the problem is by the time those sirens are going off, you can probably see it coming at you. I think most people keep up with it by watching the local weather stations.
Yeah, usually in the Midwest, especially in Indianapolis where I used to live, by the time those sirens would go off, you already knew what was going on.
You knew what was happening. That's
you
right.
could look outside.
And I'm in the same shape right now because I live... way northwest of Dallas-Fort Worth area, and like I said, we when the weather's getting dicey, we turn on the TV and watch for the warnings. Well, by the time those Dallas-Fort Worth stations start warning you, it's already hit me.
Oh, okay. Let's change gears a little bit. The other night we had on Harry Cooper, and Harry. Very educated guy when it comes to research, and pretty scary story that he's got put together with his research about Hitler surviving the war. Certainly, with your two latest books, you cover this too as well. What do you think? Did Hitler survive the war? I mean, he puts together a pretty good case.
I'm pretty convinced he did. I think. For just a wide variety of reasons and a wide variety of evidence. But I guess the key thing is that, over time, this whole public or this whole historic story has been solidified in that he and Ava Brown committed suicide in the bunker, and it's been drilled into us and it's put in the history books, and pretty soon everybody just accepts that. But if you really go back to the time that was happening in the spring of 1945, nobody was certain as to what actually had happened. And in fact, Stalin always said that Hitler got away. We now have all these FBI documents showing that they were still wondering what happened to him and tracking him and hearing reports that he was in South America, all the way up into the early 50s. But the FBI, all these reports got squirreled away. They're only just now coming to light, and then you also have to figure out in the broadest scheme of things. If you'll read my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, you'll find that Hitler didn't just suddenly appear, and he wasn't just some crazy man that somehow seized control of one of the most cultured and advanced nations in history. He was a creation of the Western bankers. And he was created for the sole purpose. He started off as a ne'er-do-well artist and a would-be architect, but they never would allow him in art schools because they said he wasn't that good. And he ended up being a soldier in World War I, and apparently a pretty good soldier. He ran messages and threw enemy fire, and he got the Iron Cross, and apparently was quite a good soldier. Then he got gassed and had a slow, painful recovery from that. And then he was knocking around trying to be an artist, living hand to mouth. So he took an extra job for this Captain Meyer, who was with Army intelligence, and he was acting as a kind of an undercover agent. And they sent him to spy on a little fledgling political party called the German Workers' Party. And when first time he ever showed up, there's only about 9 people there. This is a good lesson on how that, everybody says, well, I'm just one person. What can I do? Well, look at this. Here's 9 people.
Right.
And, but he went back to his captain and said, you're going to like these folks. They think we were stabbed in the back in World War I, and we need to rearm, and we need to build a new, stronger Germany. And they were going, yeah, we're all for that. And then he got tied in with the Thule Gesellschaft, or the Thule Society, which was an occult society made up of some of the German aristocrats and industrialists. And the Army guys told him, yeah, you're going to like this little party. They believe the same things we do. So they started funding Hitler and told him to go back and start running the party. And, of course, he built it into the Nazi party, and then by early 1933, he managed to gain election as the vice president. Well, he was chancellor, but it's kind of like vice president because Paul von Hindenburg was the president. And here's what's interesting, Jimmy. At that point, the beginning of 1933, Germany was a democratic republic.
That's
the
right.
Weimar Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a month or so later, their parliament building burned, and Hitler got on the radio and was reaching everybody, and he said, this is the communist terrorists did this, and you got to give me the power to deal with this, and we've got to protect the country. And so everybody says, yeah, and so they consolidated the office of chancellor with the president, and they named him the Führer, which meant the leader. He became the leader, and everything emanated from him. And within just a few weeks, they'd rushed through the Enabling Act, which created a nationwide security force combining all the police agencies under Fatherland Security, or Homeland Security, and it set up a system of holding camps for political dissidents, which became the concentration camps. And it started along the lines of gun registration and gun control. And whoa, does that begin to sound familiar to you?
It's
the same thing that happened after 9/11.
It's not only that, but if you think about it, and I don't know why nobody's talking about it, but right now with what ISIS is doing in the Middle East is eerily reminiscent of how the Third Reich came to power too as well.
Exactly. You just bully everybody into line.
Right. And atrocities and the beheadings and the way that things are going down over there right now, you ignore it long enough, and then you're going to turn around and Syria is going to fall, and Iraq's going to fall, and then the next thing you know, Jordan is next, and this whole domino effect. Certainly, we're watching it happen now. We knew about this uprising a couple of years ago in Syria when we decided that we were going to practically go in and bomb Syria too as well, and we wanted their help to help overthrow. The whole situation is out of control.
And who went over there and was actually, I just recently saw some photographs of him with who are now the leaders of ISIS and arranging arms to them, but John McCain, Senator John McCain. Wait a minute. It's like I've always said, Jimmy, the United States, us, we have the best enemies that money can buy.
Yeah.
But back
Yeah.
really, that's it.
Yeah.
Now back to the point. So the Western powers funded Hitler. The largest contributor of money to the Nazis was National City Bank, of New York, which is now Citicorp. The Schroeder Bank was Hitler's primary funder, and it was represented by the law office of Cromwell and Sullivan in New York, represented by Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles, who went on. John Foster Dulles became Secretary of State under Eisenhower, and Allen Dulles became the longest-serving CIA director. And these are the people who created Hitler, put him into power. And then, though, they turned on him. And why did they turn on him? Very simple. Because just like a couple of U.S. presidents, he declined to borrow money from the international bankers. He began to print and distribute German Reichmarks, just money that Germany, the central bank, published, and they didn't have to pay interest on it. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to work. In fact, the two U.S. presidents who've tried to block the efforts of those international bankers, first Abraham Lincoln by issuing greenbacks to finance the war between the states, and then in June of 1963, John F. Kennedy, who issued silver certificates, United States notes, which was money that we didn't have to pay interest on because it was based on silver from the Treasury, and the Treasury issued them. And I don't think it's a sheer coincidence that both of those presidents, Lincoln and Kennedy, were shot in the head in public.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hitler, tries the same thing. So they turned against him. But Hitler had a lot of loyal people around him. And did they try to assassinate him? Only about 25 times.
Right.
They didn't make it work. So at the end of the war, when the war was over and Germany was collapsing and Hitler got away, it just behooved everyone to say, well, he died, he committed suicide, that's the end of that. So in the most broadest general sense, I think there's a reason to believe that he lived past the war.
When did this whole, I like to tie it into Roswell because it's so obvious and it's right in front of us, but when did this lying deception to the status quo start? Did it start in World War II, or was this going on in the Holy Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire?
Well, come on, lies and deceit from government has been going on as long as there's been government. You can't tell the truth and expect people to go along with you unless it's good, It's the same thing right now. I always tell people, you can always tell if a politician's lying to you because their mouth's moving.
Right. Well, was there ever...
And it sounds like a joke, but actually it's kind of true.
It
is.
I'm
not making any judgment here. I'm just telling you can't get elected to office but telling the truth.
Right.
Look at Ron Paul, okay? Look at Ross Perot. They tried to tell us the truth, and they just didn't have a ghost of a chance.
Oh, I liked Ross. Ross, I missed that guy. But
we haven't missed his sucking sound, have we?
Did we? No. Did we ever have a time in the United States, going back to our founding fathers and forward, 1776 and forward, did we ever have a time where because I think that they wanted to start off on the right foot. Yes. They had a clean slate, right?
Yeah.
A fresh government, fresh country, fresh ideas.
And they totally turned around. You see, Jimmy, when you get down to it, there's actually only been two types of government ever attempted in the history of the world. The one, they tried for a short period of time back in ancient Greece, and then for a short period of time here in North America, and that's participatory democracy, or a democratic republic, where the power rests with the people. And then they elect representatives who elect leaders who then, have checks and balances and are responsive to the public and to the people. And, you've got a democratic republic. But both of those never lasted very long. And for the most of the history of the world, it's been only one form of government, and that is central authority. You've got a pharaoh or a king or a Caesar or a Politburo or the Führer, and that's where the power is. And then it trickles down, and whatever the individual can scrape up in the way of liberty and freedom, that's all you get. And so, yeah, you're right. Our forefathers, who had just defeated the biggest military power in the world, the British Empire, were sitting here on this virgin land, and they had the opportunity to start from scratch and to try to get it right. And they produced two of the most incredible, amazing documents in the history of the world, which was the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, to include its Bill of Rights. And what have we done? We just keep throwing them away.
We can't forget about Magna Carta too. That was a pretty bold
that
change.
Got the ball rolling way back there when they took some power away from the king. But then that got eroded pretty quick too.
So where did we start to go wrong? When did the deception start?
I think to put it in, you can go all the way back and you can talk about lightness and dark and devil and God and who knows what all. But I think actually I would say we started going wrong in World War II.
Yeah.
Because of, not because we were on the wrong side. We definitely had a moral obligation to resist Japanese imperialism and National Socialism in Germany, especially since both of them would have certainly invaded and occupied the United States if they could have. But because we fell into this military-style secrecy, surveillance and secrecy state. And then, of course, after the war, the generals and the political leaders who'd been in charge and found it so necessary during wartime, they didn't want to give up any of their power prerogatives. So, immediately we went into a Cold War. And there's always been an enemy. And they've got to protect us. And we have to give up our liberties and so that we can be protected from all the bad guys, a lot of whom is created by these very people. Just like we've seen happening and we see happening right now. This ISIS, does anybody really believe that there's some handful of people over there can suddenly have all these modern weapons and be so well organized and well funded that they can just go start taking over whole countries and we just stand around with our thumb in our ear and we can't seem to do anything about it? It's all a plan, folks. It's a destabilization plan. And after World War II, it was what President Eisenhower warned us about when he left office. He said, you got to watch out for the military-industrial complex and the power it has, whether sought or unsought. In other words, we were happily giving it all up. If you remember, Jimmy, as a kid, you went to see the monster movies, and when the monster starts tearing up the town and eating the buildings, what does everybody yell? They say, call the army. So we always tell them to the military to take care of everything. And now we are seeing, coming into clearer focus, a national police state. No longer do we have the boys in blue. We got the boys in Kevlar, who not only are dressing like they're an occupying army, but are acting like one, as you saw in Ferguson, Missouri.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we better start looking around and cleaning up our act, or we're going to find ourselves in a 1984 George Orwell nightmare world.
That was, I don't want to dwell on Ferguson, but I think for all of us, I think we were rather shocked to see, it doesn't matter what the demonstrations were based on. It doesn't matter to me what the populace is doing. It doesn't matter. We have the right to do what, now breaking into a store and riot and so forth. Okay, well, there's ways to.
That's a whole different thing.
That's
but
a whole.
Did you notice? Did you notice that the cops kind of turned their back on the looters, the people that are actually committing crimes, and they were pointing guns and screaming and hollering and cussing and pushing back and arresting people who were simply trying to exercise their First Amendment rights.
Exactly. And then when you saw those Humvees roll into town and the armored this and obvious battle fatigued, I don't know even what you want to call them, they were
Black
police,
jackets.
but
Black
well, I'm
jackets
talking the way that
and
they
helmets.
looked. They didn't look like any other invasion force that we would use in somebody else's country. And to see that go down in one of our cities, I think we were all appalled by that completely.
That's right. I remember reading some Iraqi veteran was there, and he said, I was with the Marines in Iraq, and he said, when we went out of town, we didn't even go in showing that much muscle.
No, right.
We got to start getting our heads on straight in this country.
That was the one thing that I was glad that the media was there. The media did everything wrong with Ferguson. There was a lot of things that were right, but they handled it completely wrong. But I'm glad that was all shown live for everybody across the country. We should have learned, and I'm kind of like you, I don't really even want to get into it because, for one thing, we haven't seen the end of it, so we really don't know how that particular incident's going to turn out. But I know that we could do things a little bit better. I'm sorry, the cat just jumped on me. I lost my train of thought there. But we have to, and I think with all of the surplus military hardware that was available to us, to have where are these police forces getting the money to go out and buy all of these Humvees?
Well, that's the thing, and I'm covering this in my new book. It's all under Program 1033 of the Pentagon. And this is no more, this is a sop to the defense contractors. We're withdrawing some of our military activity in Afghanistan, Iraq, and so the defense contractors, they want to keep making helmets and bullets and rifles and MRAPs and all, Humvees and all this heavy equipment. After all, we got to keep the sputtering economy alive. So what are they doing? They're handing over all this stuff to police departments. And as I understand it, when the police department gets a piece of equipment through the Pentagon, whether it's rifles, whether it's grenade launchers, whether it's a MRAP, that's the mine-resistant
armored personnel carrier. Yeah, right.
Big armored cars. How many landmines? I wonder do they have in Ferguson, Missouri? But anyway,
or Dallas, Texas,
or Dallas, Texas.
Right.
Yeah, and so as I understand it, when you take that equipment, one of the only conditions is that if you haven't used it in a year or so, that you have to give it back. Well, if you get a new gun for Christmas, you're just dying to go try it out. And if they tell you, now if you don't use it, we're going to take it back, what are you going to do? You're certainly going to go out and use it. And that's one of the things that's egging on this whole militarization of the police. It's really incredible. But the point I was going to make, and quickly, let me just say this, is that I hope that what this Ferguson issue, along with you'll remember the Trayvon Martin case, is the media, I wish they would quit jumping to conclusions. Report the facts. Report if somebody says they think there's been an injustice here. But lay off of that, dragging up this, that, and the other thing. One side's got a picture of some guy, as a 12-year-old kid, and the other has a picture of him at 18 flashing gang signs and making obscene gestures and stuff. And they all just play off each other and get everybody all conflicted and divided and fighting. Why don't we act like responsible adults? And when something like that happens, let's just kind of hold our judgment in reserve until we can find out for certain what actually happened.
That's right. And there's one other thing with all of this with ISIS. Now, today it's called ISIS, but, we have all of those different terrorist factions in Africa, Indonesia, Bali.
It's basically kind of the same bunch. It's basically still the old Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
But they can't use that term because they were aligned with the Nazis during World War II. And at the end of the war, the British took them over and then handed them over to the CIA, which means we've been running that all along. Now, when they got Osama bin Laden, brought him to the United States back in the early 80s and funded him, and he came in under the name Tim Osman. And then they sent him back to Afghanistan to arm the Muslim Brotherhood and to fight the Russians who had moved into Afghanistan. But they couldn't use that name Muslim Brotherhood, so they changed it to Al-Qaeda, okay, which, according to some British government officials, does not refer to a home base. It translates as the base, but it doesn't mean their home base or their headquarters. It means the CIA computer database, and they can go in there and they can get their hired Arab mercenaries to go and be anything they want them to be. When we were fighting in Kosovo, we had Al-Qaeda was on our side, and we were giving them arms and equipment in exchange for letting them, for them supporting us in the fighting there in Kosovo, and we were also letting them run their drugs into Europe. All this has been well documented. This is not some wild conspiracy theory.
Right.
And so now I think Al-Qaeda, we kept telling everybody through the Bush administration and through the early Obama administration that, Al-Qaeda's on the run. We've got them on the ropes. Well, we've pretty well taken care of that. And, of course, we said we got Osama bin Laden, so Al-Qaeda's kind of gotten passe. So it's the same bunch, same computer data bunch, and we just given them a new name. Now they're ISIS.
Well, and it's easy. The best way to keep a war going, create an enemy. Let's call it terrorist. We can't see them. We can't taste them. They don't have a country. They're just out there, and
That's
it's
right. We're
perpetual.
In a war against terrorism, which is not a that's a tactic. Okay,
It's
not
perpetual.
It's not a noun. It's not somebody. And to say that we're in a war against terrorism, we'd kind of like be after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. We declared war on naval aviation.
Yes, and keep that money machine rolling.
That's right. It's all about the money.
This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We are talking with Jim Mars live from Texas. I love saying Texas. Hey, Jim, check this out. Tonight we started playing a game here on Fade to Black. It's called Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. Okay? So, and we did a couple of examples tonight. There's a bunch of them out there, like Mick Jagger, Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. And so we got that flying on Twitter, and I think you get the gist of the game. And in Twitter, somebody threw out, and I thought this was great, George H.W. Bush, Genius or Luckiest Man Alive. You're from Texas. I'm going to throw that back to you. What was he, a genius or Luckiest Man Alive?
Neither one. He was a minion.
Oh, wow.
a well-heeled and very prominent and a player, but a minion. Okay.
Yeah.
He was a point man for what he himself described as the New World Order.
And he said that so many times too. By the way, a frightening amount of times.
He also said at one point to that old reporter, the woman who was always at the press conferences, Helen
Hunt.
He once told her, he said, and she put this in a newsletter. She said that George Herbert Walker Bush said this to her. He said, if the American people ever find out what we've done to them, they'll chase us down the street and lynch us.
Does he mean him and his family or the government?
Yeah.
Or both?
Both. He means all of us.
Did you ever meet? Have you ever met him?
Yeah, I did. Matter of fact, and I met Barbara, and she seemed real nice.
I've met George, and I got to say, I was blown away at how cool he was. Mm-hmm. He was actually, I didn't
master. But by the way, if you go right past George Herbert Walker Bush to his dad, Prescott Bush, now you begin to find out why things are the way they are. Because Prescott Bush was a very powerful senator from Connecticut, and he helped create the CIA. He also, before that, helped create Hitler and the Nazis. because he was a director of Union Banking Corporation.
That's right.
And he continued to fund the Nazis well after war had started with them. And in fact, in late 1942, middle of World War II, the United States government filed on him under the Trading with the Enemies Act, and convicted him of being nothing but a financial front man for Hitler and the Nazis. And now you can kind of understand where some of that neocon conservative viewpoints come from. In fact, I would say that neoconservatism, that was just their more modern term for National Socialism. That's what they were.
Right.
And they were National Socialists, but they couldn't say National Socialists because all the educated people knew that in the German language the acronym was Nazi, so they couldn't admit to that.
Right.
So they changed it to we're neoconservatives, we're neocons. But anyway, here's what's really fascinating is nobody much knows about this problem that Prescott Bush got into, although it got him run out of Connecticut. That's why he and the whole family moved to Texas. And that's another thing that has constantly griped me through the Bush years, both senior and junior, is everybody's told that they're just well-to-do, lucky oil men from Texas. No, they're Yankee carpetbaggers. They came down here and built themselves a little empire thanks to the Rockefellers and all the money that they poured into Texas. But anyway, the reason that nobody has heard much about Prescott Bush and his connection to the Nazis is that in the summer of 1942, when he undoubtedly knew they were investigating him and it might come out about all his Nazi dealings, what does he do? He helps found and create the United Service Organization, the USO. Holy cow. If you've ever been in the military services, you love the USO.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that's old enough to remember the movies and things from World War II, the USO canteen was a big deal.
Still is, actually. Still is,
actually.
Yeah.
And they do some really great work.
Absolutely.
But so how could the government, in the middle of World War II, tell the public that the guy who founded the USO was a Nazi front man? It would have been a propaganda disaster. So they just they fined him a few $1 million and slapped him on the wrist, and he ran off to Texas.
Did he? What happened to him? Did he just retire from the Senate and just got out of banking and into oil? What did he do after that?
Politics, I think, and then he put his son into the oil business.
Right.
But I think George maintained, George Herbert Walker Bush,
right,
I think carried on and maintained the family's relationship with the CIA because I have reason to believe I'm still in touch with a fellow who flew arms and ammunition for the Bay of Pigs invaders in 1961. And they were doing that under the color of oil field equipment. And, you get a case that says Schlumberger oil, and you open it up, and there's machine guns in it. But he said they were also using Zapata Drilling Company. Well, that was George Herbert Walker's oil company. And I have reason to believe that he was connected then through the CIA to the Bay of Pigs invasion. And in fact, the two ships that the CIA used to transfer people and supplies and that were damaged in the Bay of Pigs invasion were, are you ready, the Houston and the Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all there, but this is all the undercurrent. This is all the underside of history that nobody ever gets taught about in school.
Somebody just tweeted.
And other people try to tell them about it. They go, oh, some conspiracy theory.
Right. Somebody just tweeted, this is from Dave Matherly. He says, ask Jim if he's aware of the father of neocons, Chicago University professor Leo Strauss.
Yes, and Strauss's connection, yeah. That's it trickles down. We're not talking about one person here. This is a big country. There's a lot of people vying for control, and there's a pecking order. And these people, they were very smart because they began to preach the principles of socialism going back into the 20s and 30s And there's been rough periods, during World War II. It got to where nobody wanted to deal with socialism. And then after the war, you had the McCarthy Red scares and stuff. But nevertheless, they have just slowly but surely, and beginning with the campuses, put out this whole agenda to preach socialism. And the reason for that is what's led us to what I mentioned earlier about how that we're back to central authority, because that's why that these rich people, it seems like a dichotomy that, you got these wealthy capitalists, and yet they're supporting socialism. People like George Soros. And, you'd think that they would not be for socialism, an extreme form of which is communism. But no, they support that. Why? Because under any socialist program, no matter how beneficial, and we have some, Medicare.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
It's a good program. People need it. So there's a certain amount. I'm not trying to nail all socialism, but my point is that any social program, good, bad, or indifferent, to be really effective requires central administration, centralized power. And these rich people know that if they can centralize the power, they got the money to buy it up, and they will be in control, and they can rule the world.
With all of the socialists that did leave Germany and went down to South America, certainly here to the United States, some went to Russia, of course, and other countries, but they tried to get a foothold. What happened with that foothold? We were talking with Harry about Argentina, and you have Uruguay and Paraguay, and
well, now they hid out there for several years, and some of the top dogs like Morton Bormann and Hitler, but they in the wake of the war they couldn't do that much. But what they did was they took all of the wealth that they had taken out of Germany under Action Adlerflug, or Operation Eagle Flight, and by the end of the summer of 1944, when the Allies broke out at St. Lo and broke out of the Normandy beachhead, they knew the writing was on the wall. They knew there's no way Germany was going to win the war. So they began Operation Eagle Flight, and they began to take scientists and patents and licenses, money, gold, anything worth anything, artwork, and they tried to take it all out of Europe. And they created more than 1,000 corporations all around the world, and in many different countries, and usually with some native as a figurehead on these companies, but they were controlled by these Nazis, by these National Socialists. And I think originally their plan was to go to South America or go somewhere and rebuild their Reich and then come back and try to regain the world. But somewhere along the line, it just turned into business. And these corporations then grew and grew and grew. They began to merge with some of the criminal gangs. If you'll think about your gangster movies of the 30s, what did those Prohibition gangsters, what was their one true goal? They all said, boy, they wanted to go straight and be accepted in society, okay? Well, they sent their sons and daughters to the big schools because they had all the money, and they got Harvard business degrees, and they got, first thing you know, they were the head of corporations, and they began to work hand in glove with these fugitive Nazis, and they built up their huge multinational corporations, which then began to buy up everything around them, take over the smaller corporations, and now we can see that we're heading for a situation that's already been depicted in some of the futuristic science fiction movies where, there are no more governments, there's just corporate.
You're scaring the crap out of me right now. That is
that's what's happening. And if you know what's happening, then there's nothing to be afraid of. You just say no. I'm not going to play that game.
But it's a very deep statement. Let's go straight. Let's be under the radar. Let's go straight. Let's go legit. But the attitude and the morals are still there. They're just hidden.
And that's why they've done away with Stegall glass and a bunch of this legislation that was put into place to protect the public from the greediness and avariceness of these bankers and of these people. And yet now they've been doing around with that. And look at this. When I was say in high school in the 60s, if you had told me that America was going to be a country that publicly avowed the use of torture on people they had taken prisoner, many of whom had never even been tried or even accused of anything, and that the President of the United States could, on his own, select an American citizen for assassination, I would have called you a liar. I would say, well, you're crazy. That could never happen. Well, folks, here it is.
Can we go back for a second? Let's back up. We started to talk about Thule and Vril.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind? Let's back up. Let's back up and discuss that because their influence is still here today.
That's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everybody, and I also want to talk about Operation Highjump, and I want to
let's put the timeline into things there, because you
exactly.
You asked if there earlier. You asked if there hadn't been some kind of movement to try to put a stop to this, and if it tied into Roswell. Well, yeah, Operation Highjump was right there in January, February of 1947, when they went down there and tried to kick the Nazis out of Antarctica, and instead got whipped and had to come back here with their tail between their legs after losing some people and some planes, and tried to act like nothing had gone on. They just had some bad luck because they didn't want to panic everybody and tell them the Nazis were still going and in control. And then the next thing you know, we got just a few months later, we got a crash in the desert in New Mexico that is still not been fully explained by the government.
Who was the Thule Society? Let's start there.
Well, they were just some people that were centered in Germany who believed, and they kind of got rolled in with the Vril Society. That's VRIL, and the Vril Society believed kind of along the lines of the ether, the idea that there is a energy force around us that's not quite air and it's not quite a gas, and it's the ether, and they call it the Vril, and that if you can capture this essence in the atmosphere and of all living things, the Vril force, that you can have free energy and you'd be healthier and blah blah blah. And interestingly enough, the beliefs in the Vril were very similar to what we're now hearing about 0-point energy, which is the idea of obtaining energy from the molecules around us. It's very theoretical at the moment, at least as far as we know. They're not admitting they can actually do all this, although we know they've got all kinds of futuristic things working. But anyway, and then the Vril kind of rolled in with the Thule Society. The idea of Thule came from the idea that this Aryan race, this strange race that nobody's been able quite to explain exactly where they came from, but they came into northern India 1,000 years ago, and then also into the Levant, there, Middle East, and then moved into England, or moved through Europe and ended up in England. I was somewhat surprised in researching the Celts that the original Druids and Celts did not originate in England. They came from the Middle East. They came from ancient Mesopotamia. And this gets into a lot of other things, but the Nazis believed that they were the descendants, no matter how mixed breed they may be, of these Aryan people from thousands of years ago, and that they came from off planet, that they came from the stars, and that they were, that's why they were all concerned about the Aryan blood. In fact, if you'll go back, you find that throughout history, beginning with the Sumerians, beginning with the Egyptians, Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, the royalty in Europe to this very day, they're all concerned with the bloodline. And why should that matter in today's egalitarian age? Well, it matters because they believe that they can be traced back to the ancient astronauts, and that they are the hybrids that mentioned in the Bible, the men of renown, the Nephilim, where the sons of God came to Earth and wedded with the human women and produced these men of renown. So they think that if they can trace their bloodline through that, that's what gives them the right to rule over all the rest of us.
Did Hitler ever, and other members of Bormann and Speer and Himmler, all of the high-ranking Nazi party leaders, did they ever? Is there evidence, direct evidence, that they sat down with Thule and Vril?
Yes, there is. Early on, Hitler was tied in pretty thickly with a bunch of those things. The Theodor Dresser, who helped form the Nazi Party, and others were directly connected in there, and I think he went along with that too. Himmler too was, he built this huge castle at Lebenswell and had all this esoteric stuff and ancient Nordic runes and all this Aryan stuff piled in there, and he was really into it. Hermann Goering, he was just a dope fiend, a drunkard, and kind of stumble around. And then Martin Bormann and Hess and some of the others, they were not all that interested, although Hess, he's the one who ended up flying to England and was going to try to make a separate peace. But he ran out of gas, and he had his parachute out, and he got captured, and everybody disavowed him. Hitler disavowed him, said he was nuts. And but he, I think the whole purpose of his, if you'll read my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, you'll find that there's plenty of evidence to show that this was a legitimate peace overture from the Germans, from the Nazis, that went bad, and so they had to disavow it, and that he made that remarkable and unexplained plane flight based on occultism, based on some astrologers who told him, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. So, yes, there's all kinds of evidence showing they were mixed up with it. In fact, there was, I think I quoted in my book, some of the prosecutors from the United States and some of the other countries at the Nuremberg trials took great pains to keep any mention of this occultism out of the record, because they didn't want these Nazi leaders to plead insanity. And at that point in time, and even today, a lot of people say, well, believe in that stuff, they're just insane. Well, maybe they are, maybe they're not, maybe it's real, maybe it's not. The point is, they believed in it, and they were dedicated to it. And then Hitler did make, kind of outlawed some of the occult thing. He threw some of the competing astrologers in prison, and in the early part of the war. But most people who really study the subject agree that he only acted against some of the occult people at that point, just, number one, getting rid of any competition, and also he was afraid they might turn their psychic powers on him and find out what he was really up to.
How do you, and what evidence is there about that massive leap in technology that they had over there over the rest of the world? I mean, we were years behind what was going on in Berlin and around Germany at that time. Do you think
That's
that
right.
do you think it came from the stars? Do you think it came directly from Vril and Thule?
Well, yeah, I do, and here's why I think so and how I think so. I'd heard stories for years that the Nazis had captured a flying saucer, okay? Either, and one story said it was in Poland, another said it was in North Africa, another one said somewhere else.
One would
and yet,
possibly
every time I'd go and dig, I never could confirm any of those stories.
Right.
I am now of the belief, I think it was this. I think it was remote viewing. All right? You know about remote viewing, right,
Of
Jimmy?
course.
All right. Because everybody kind of knows about it now, but when I started, was introduced to that and wrote my book about it, that was censored, was blocked from publication, because at that time in the mid-'90s, it was still a very top-secret classified program of the U.S. Army. So it's akin to remote viewing. In the 20s, 1910, World War I time in the 20s, both in Germany and in the United States and Britain, occultism was a big fad. And people would hold seances, and they want to talk to the spirit world, and you had the thing about the fairies, and there was just a huge interest in all of this. Well, the Germans were in on it too, and they were having these big seances, particularly among the Thule Society and the Brill Society. And I think that they managed to basically do some remote viewing, and it put them in touch with some non-human intelligences. And I think these intelligences got to looking at the Nazis early on, and they had neat uniforms, and they all marched in goose step together, and they looked sharp, and they were talking about, making the world a safe and dynamic place for everybody, and being efficient, and they looked pretty good. So I think they started sharing with them some of their technology, and that's why towards the end of the war, they were so far ahead of us with flying saucers, with rockets, with 3-stage rockets, with guns that could shoot around corners, with electromagnetic things such as the Nazi Glocke or the bell. And they were messing with energy manipulation. And in fact, in my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, you'll find fairly convincing evidence that they actually developed an atomic bomb long before we did. The problem was they didn't have a reliable delivery system. So they ended up swapping their atomic technology to us, the United States, so we could end the war with Japan in exchange for immunity. And that's why so many of them got away, because we let them get away.
Do you think there's a connection with Vril and Hannibal flying saucers and Roswell?
There's a lot of argument about that, and I do think that at that point they may have actually gotten hold of one or parts of one, and they were probably in great secrecy looking at that. But from everything I know about Roswell, I don't think it was a German machine. I think it was truly something that was non-human.
To go from, and this is the point I think that everybody needs to grasp hold of. To go from the Wright brothers and to go from the technology that we had in 1910, trains and automobiles and balloons and so, to go from that in just a mere 20 to 30 years to jet engines, rockets, and nuclear technology.
Fiber optics, computers.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes, it all happened very, very quickly, and it all came out of Europe. Aside from the Wright brothers.
Came out of, it started in Europe, but then once Roswell had happened, then there was a literal explosion of this technology. And it's because we captured a lot of the basics from the Nazis at the end of the war, and then once we got some ET technology, we just jumped decades ahead, and that's why starting about 1947, and then on up, I guess, till today, really. You buy a computer, and you better buy a cheap one because, 6 months is going to be obsolete. I mean, it's just the buildup of technology has been explosive.
Yeah, I've said it so many times, but you can just look at 1947 as that magic year and everything seems to have happened after that. And before that, we were in slow motion.
That's right. Although I will say, I think at certain high levels of government, even before 1947, they knew that we were in contact with non-human intelligences. They just didn't know what to do about it, so they decided they better keep it quiet. And the reason I can say that is because there was a crash in Missouri in 1941 that they apparently recovered. In early 1942, the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, I have a document signed by George Marshall, Roosevelt's chief of staff, where he said that the Army had recovered an unconventional aircraft that was shot down during that Battle of Los Angeles in the hills of San Bernardino, and that the Navy had recovered an unconventional aircraft off the coast of California. So I think they had all that. Now, what's really interesting to me is at the bottom of this memo, signed by George Marshall, there's a little paragraph that said, I have ordered a thorough search of War Department files for any reports or any information concerning unconventional aircraft dating back to 1897. Well, 1897, the spring, that was the crash in Aurora, Texas, where they said a long silver cigar-shaped object crashed in the little pilot, according to the newspaper accounts in Fort Worth and in Dallas and other places, said the pilot was not an inhabitant of this world. And that was 1897. This is 6 years before the Wright brothers flew. So that should be, to me, a smoking gun in the UFO community, because here was a well-documented UFO crash with a non-human pilot 6 years before man was able to fly.
I'm going to take a quick call from a Fade or Not here in Indianapolis. This is Michael Anderson. Michael, welcome to the program.
How you doing tonight, Jimmy and Jim?
Jimmy and Jim.
Howdy, Michael.
How you doing? Mr. Mars, I love it when you're on shows. You're always fun to listen to.
He's all that. He knows that.
Hey, I got a question.
Yeah.
For Mr. Mars, out of all the different societies out there, Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bone Society, even Knights of Columbus, what is the most notorious? Say maybe the one that we should be the most worried about, most concerned. What's the most evilest, I guess you would say, of all the different
most
societies
sinister, maybe?
Yeah, the most sinister. Yeah.
Sinister. There you go.
Thank you, Michael. You want to take it? You want to stay with us? You want to take it off the air?
Take it off the air.
You got it. Thank you, Michael. Have a good night.
Okay, Michael wants to know, of all the secret societies, which was the most sinister. And boy, it's kind of a tough one, because some of them, it'd be a close contest for some of them, but I guess I'd have to say that the way that the old Bavarian Illuminati spread, and in fact, I've seen letters from George Washington who said he had no doubts that the doctrines of the Illuminati had not spread to the United States, and they're still spreading, because some of the tenets that the Illuminati was trying to push, and they were very highly socialistic. They wanted public control of everything, of land, property, food, distribution, manufacturing, everything. And they wanted to get control over the education system so they could educate the kids and bring them up to be good little socialists and their little Illuminati. And they only wanted that their Illuminati members to run everything. And they wanted... they had like a platform of almost 25 items, and interestingly enough, it's almost word for word the same platform that the Communist Party advanced back in the 30s. And then, interestingly enough, that was almost word for word for the same party that the National Socialists, or the Nazis, were pushing in Nazi Germany. So I would have to say the Illuminati, now whether they still exist as an organization is pretty doubtful. In fact, I would kind of think not. But the tenets and the doctrines and the theology are still there and still being pushed by the New World Order. And as far as today, if when you're talking, you say, well, they are trying to do this and they are doing that and they're behind the chemtrails and they have control of the media, and everybody goes, well, who's they? Well, simply get on and Google the Bilderberg Conference. Okay, the Bilderbergs are so secretive that they don't even have an official name. They're called the Bilderbergs because they were first identified meeting in 1954 at the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland. So they're called the Bilderbergs. So just Google Bilderbergs. And now they're kind of out of the closet. Now it's been secret for years. In fact, the media was under orders to act like it didn't even exist. But in the last couple of 3 or 4 years, when they have their yearly meetings, the media has begun to take notice and begin to cover it somewhat. And this year, back in June, when they had their meeting, they actually published a membership list or an attendee list. But keep in mind that everybody who attended is not necessarily on that list. people on that list are only the people who agreed to have their names put out. And yet, if you go over it, you'll find that they represent the leading wealth and industrialists and capitalists from all of the major countries, France and Britain, United States, and they all meet and they all secretly discuss things. And then what can be demonstrated is that although they say they're strictly a conversation organization and that they don't say what they talked about because they want their members to freely discuss issues of the day, but what has been well documented is that these discussions they have invariably turn out to be official government policies. So these are people who are running the world or trying to. And I would simply leave it with this. What if the owners of the NFL football franchises all got together in a hotel room on an upper floor and then sealed off the hotel, had armed guards all around it, wouldn't let anybody in, forbade anybody to talk about not only what was said in there, but who was in there? Wouldn't the media scream bloody murder and claim restraint of trade and monopoly? And you can't do that, okay? But this is what they're doing, except this isn't sports. This is the real world. And they're talking about business and politics and and banking and the things that actually impact on each and every one of us.
This is the thing, and I'm going to talk about your fellow Texan, Alex Jones, when it comes to that. Is history going to prove him right? You know,
yes.
look. Before
Yes, and let me say this about Alex, because early on I was kind of taken aback by Alex Jones and didn't care for him much at all, because as a journalist, you know, I always found that to be respectful and be considerate and try to give an objective viewpoint on things was the decent way, the gentlemanly way to do things. And so when I see Alex Jones, he's out there parading in the streets and he's shouting through the bullhorn. He's going, "We know you're in there. You're not going to take us over. You New World Order tools." You know, it kind of put me off. But then I stopped and thought about it, and I said, okay, now wait a minute. Alex Jones has never called himself a journalist. He didn't claim to be a journalist. He is an activist, okay? And to be an activist, then he's very active. He shouts and he screams and he looks for all kinds of dots to connect, and he tries to present all this information in his gravelly, grouchy voice. So I went, oh, okay, well, I see that, so I can accept that. He just goes at it different than the way I do. So then the next question was, well, yeah, but okay, but is he telling the truth? And I want to tell you something that, yes, I believe he is. I've never caught him in a lie, and if he has said some things that turned out not to be true, we all have, I have, and it's not because it was because he was told something that turned out not to be true.
You know who else is like that?
I've met him, I've gone down with him, and I feel like he's a very concerned and responsible person.
I want to get him on this show. I would have a good time.
You should.
Yeah, I would have a good time. Do you have a direct line to Alex?
No, you can't ever get hold of him.
I thought all you Texans...
He moves fast and furious.
I thought all you Texans hung out at some secret place all the
time. No, he's down in Austin, and I'm up in North Texas, and I know it sounds... Some of these people from smaller states, they go, well, you know, just drive down there. And, hey, you try driving through Texas sometime. Let me put it this way, and this is true. From the Louisiana border of Texas to El Paso, that's running east to west, is about the same distance from El Paso to Los Angeles.
Yeah, I said the other day on the show, Jim, and I'm not kidding. When you drive through Texas, you drive through all four seasons.
That's right.
You do.
That's right. You do. and you drive through four different climates. You drive down South Texas, you're in the tropics. You go to West Texas, you're in the mountains.
Yeah.
You go to East Texas south, you're on the beaches. Go to East Texas north, you're in the piney woods. And then you get up where I am, and you're just kind of in what they call the cross timbers, and we're a little bit of everything.
Exactly. You got snow, you got the leaves turn, and you've got the desert, you've got the humidity all wrapped up into one. It's called Dallas. It's called
exactly. God, I love it.
I got a question here from Method of Signaling. He says, how did Mars get a free pass, kind of, to expose all of these groups without fear of retribution? Yeah, man.
That's actually kind of a good question. Number one, I'm not sure I'm out of the woods yet. Number two, I think the whole thing is because for the first part of my career, I was working for an establishment, major big city newspaper, and they're a little hesitant to try to mess with establishment people. You know, they have it pretty well under control because the editors and the top officials of the news business, they pretty much keep a lid on everything. You can't stop everything from slipping through, and they know that. And then I was a good journalist. I've won lots of awards, and I always make sure and double check on. Now, listen, if I could tell you and your audience everything I actually know, we'd be here all night, and your head would be blown.
Yeah, they just tweeted
because I can't prove all that. I'm not going to say anything I can't pretty well prove. Okay.
They just tweeted that we need to do a Jim Mars week here on Fade to Black. They recognize.
I don't know if you could afford that much beer. And then when I started publishing books, I was very, very fortunate in that I managed to hook up with this senior executive editor at HarperCollins who believed in my work and knew that I was doing good work. And he saw to it that I got published there by HarperCollins, which is one of the major publishers in this country. And, of course, that's owned by a news corporation. That's Rupert Murdoch. And as a result, Rupert Murdoch is just not this Australian guy that's made a lot of money. And I'm sure that he has reached his accommodations with the New World Order, but I'm not sure that he's actually part and parcel of them or are definitely in their pocket. So as long as my books were selling, they kept publishing them, and they're still doing it. I've had plenty of attempts to try to muzzle me and tone me down, and you can't say that, you can't say this, you know. But I have found in my experience that if you're a good journalist and you've dotted your I's and you've crossed your T's, they have a hard time telling you they can't publish something.
Have you ever thought about, we're going to move on here, we've got so much to talk about, but have you ever thought about running for office?
Well, I thought about it, but then that's going to turn me into a liar. Because if I got up and told the truth, nobody would vote for me.
Well, I was going to ask you this earlier. When, you know, I don't think anybody is born a liar. You know, you go through high school, you go through college, and you decide, you know, you take all of your history classes, and you get into politics, take your government class, and you decide maybe that you want to run for your local seat in town or whatever. You get into legislature of some kind.
Right.
You get into politics. Is that where the lying is taught? Is it? I mean,
Well, you learn by osmosis. Okay, the old Speaker of the House, the Texan Sam Rayburn, once said, "To get along, you got to go along." And they learned that. I've seen it over my lifetime. You get somebody that's young and they're fired up and they're full of idealism, and they say, I'm going to go to Washington and I'm going to clean that place up, you know. And so by hook or crook, maybe they come from a small district and there's not much opposition, or they're well liked, and they actually get elected. So they go up to Washington and they quickly find out that there's a pecking order there and a whole system of committees and committee chairmanships and caucuses and leaders of committees and stuff, and that, if they raise too much cane, they get shunted off into a back cloak closet, and they don't do anything, so they start compromising, okay? To get along, you got to go along. And pretty soon they're voting with some of the establishment people just so they can try to get one or two of their little pieces of legislation through. And they start compromising, and the longer they stay in office, the more they compromise. And before too long, they're just another part of the problem.
We have a call here from Star 6. Star 6, how are you tonight, sir?
Well, tonight I'm not Star 6. Tonight I am the crying wolf from the great tribe of Snohomish, Washington.
There you go.
Holy cow.
Say hi.
Into tonight. This gentleman does not realize his book is very similar to another book. And here's what I'm trying to say. sometimes a book you don't have to buy. This gentleman's book you don't have to buy. And here's why. There's a book written, Alkalize or Die. And that's really what this gentleman is talking about tonight. He's got a title of a book. If you don't know the title, don't even buy the book. The message is clear. It's just like Alkalize or Die. By the way, that's by Dr. Young. I'm not plugging anybody, but this gentleman here is off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is so far out there. I'm even looking for a satellite. I live on Star 6, that's true. But the rest of you don't even know this guy is way out there in the old bliss. And he's right on target. And I'm out of here. And I've enjoyed listening to all this week. Jimmy, you are spinning the universe and never, ever forget it.
Thank you, Six. And that is that. There you go, Jim. And that's,
I think I thank you.
Yeah, and the lead up to you being on the show this week. Look, Harry Cooper's Harry Cooper. He's great. Joe Fex last night with his collection of photographs and UFO stuff and Third Reich flying saucer stuff. All great. But you were so anticipated with being on the show, and everybody's excited. And the thing is I think that you have a way of speaking to people, and that's part of it. I forget who said it, but it's a very, very honest quote, which is theatrics is half of the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I don't know about theatrics, but after all, though, that's been my job ever since I committed to be a journalist. Is I'm the guy who's supposed to go. I don't necessarily know anything. I'm just an old Texas reporter. But I go, and I'll tell you one thing that I noticed that it's different from me and a lot of the other people I ran into in the news business is I actually listen to people, okay? You'd be amazed at how many people have accused the media of misquoting them when actually they didn't. They actually said what they said, but what they said was not what they intended, not what they meant to say. So I actually listen to people and try to find out what's the message, what are they trying to say, and then report that. And so I've tried to stick with that through my career, and it stood me in good stead. So I don't claim to know that much more than anybody else. It's just that I've been there and I've done that, and I've talked to a lot of people, and I've traveled the world and done a lot of things, weird things, cool things, and I do feel like I have kind of a little bit of an overview on things, and I think we're missing that in our society today, because if you think about it, we live in a very highly specialized society. You're a banker, or you're a lawyer, you're a auto mechanic, you're a truck driver, whatever you do, that's what you do, and you may be the best one there, but you may not know much about anything else.
Who do we, when we look at countries today, who do we fear now? Who is it? Is it Russia? Is it China? Is there a reason, or are?
Well, there's actually been some polls made, international polls. You haven't heard about this in our media because our media is under tight control. Everything we see and hear in this country, and I'm talking everything from news to TV, satellite, broadcasting, print, books, book clubs, billboards, magazines, music, movies, you name it, everything is now under the control of 5 corporations, multinational corporations, and these have interlocking directorships and interconnected ownerships. So a handful of people control everything we see and hear. But there have been some polls taken worldwide, and guess what nation people now fear the most?
Us. There you go. That's actually
the U.S.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're our own worst enemy.
That's right. Well, we have the best enemies money can buy.
I read the other day, or actually, it was a documentary. Saw a documentary the other day. The numbers I'm going to be off about, but it doesn't matter. Like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we had like 60, 65 independent meat manufacturers here in the United States. Today, we have like 3.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what the packaging says, it comes from one of 3. There is, all of that is gone. You're absolutely right. If you got another call, let's grab this one really quick. I think I know who this is, by the way. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
This is Billy, the truck driver.
Hey, Billy. This is Billy, the truck. You were just talking. Hey, Jim, you were just talking. No matter who you are. Okay, this is Billy, the truck driver. And
hey, let me tell you something. I've had some good close friends that were truck drivers, and I even did that for a while to write a story about truckers, and I rode with them, and went to the truck stops and everything. And I want to tell you something. It's like any other group of people. There's good ones and bad ones and a whole lot of in-betweens. But I want to tell you something. As a group, truckers probably know more about what's really going on in this country than a whole lot of other folks.
Let me tell you something about Billy. He says he's a truck driver, but I think by day he teaches physics at his local college. Trust me on this. Hey, Billy, what have you got for Jim tonight? And say good evening.
Oh, man. I definitely I wasn't able to get on the sandbox because you can't text while you're driving, but I was not going to miss Jim Mars. That's for sure.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm so grateful that you have him on the show again. I do have one important question, and then another question is a little bit of a derailment from the theme that y'all could carry tonight. But my first question is one straight from the heart. If we recognize that there are some covert, sinister operations that are, we've heard about breakaway civilizations. We've heard about depopulation. All of this stuff we're hearing about. If we know that this is going on, from Jim Mars's perspective, he's already given a great promotion to the kind of activism that Alex Jones does. But from his perspective, what do the people do? I've heard things as much as if you don't like the corporate mentality, don't buy their products, all this kind of stuff. Even that's small. To me, that's not an effective enough move. What, in Jim Mars's perspective, is the most effective thing for people to do in the face of what will probably be the 1984 Orwellian nightmare?
That's a great question. Hold on. Let Jim handle that first part first. Jim, what can we do against?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, and the answer is we can do a whole lot more than we think we can, but you have to do it. Now, I think what Billy's asking, and this is what I hear from so many people, but I'm just one person. What can I do? Well, let me think back through history, okay? When did a committee ever do anything? It's always been Genghis Khan, almost conquered the world. Alexander the Great, young guy, conquered the world. The Caesars, Hitler, Churchill, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr. These are one people, one person. And yet look what they did. So never underestimate the power that is with us if you'll simply get off your duff and go do something. Now, I already hear Billy going, yeah, but what am I supposed to do? And here's the thing, folks. I can't tell you what to do. That's going to be based on a very individualistic criteria. It's going to depend on your education and on your viewpoints, on your religion, on how you were brought up, on whether you're extroverted or introverted. Now, there's a whole list of things I could give you. Write letters to your Congress people and to your legislatures and start locally. Get control over your local politics. Get control over your city council people and your county commissioners and whoever. And make sure that they adhere to the Constitution and make sure that they're doing the things that you feel like are in the best interest of everyone, not just you. And then if you don't want to get into politics, don't like politics, well, then get into street theater. Write letters to the editors of your newspapers and to your TV and radio stations and hold their feet to the fire. They try to tell you, here, hey, turn into this station where you get all the best news. Well, all right, tell them, look, I want the news. And quit telling me about the little old lady growing squash and and the local rec, I want to know what's really going to impact my life and hold their feet to the fire and make them do good journalism. And I guess the key thing to it is when you hear all these people trying to rattle the sabers and saying, let's go to war with Iran. No, we'll be friends with Iran today. Let's go to war with Syria. No, wait a minute. We're going to support Syria, so now let's go to war with Russia. Just say no. No. you know, if you stop and think about it, I keep hearing, in fact, I've been to whole conferences where they have discussed how to promote peace, how to end a war. And you know what? I can tell you how to end war in 2 words. Stay home. Okay? If everybody stayed home, there wouldn't be any war, right? It's that simple, folks. But you've got to do it. And when they say, okay, we've got to go to war, you got to say, no, I'm not doing it. And you just don't do it. What if when Hitler said, okay, we've been attacked by Poland, so we got to go and invade them and conquer that country and move on to the rest of Europe? What if all those Germans had said, no, I don't think so?
Right.
We wouldn't have had World War II, okay?
Right.
All we'd have had was a funny little guy with a funny little mustache jumping up, screaming and hollering, and everybody would probably snickering at him behind his back. But no, the real terror, the real horror of today is not the psychopaths and the sociopaths that want power and want to pit one group against another and want to lead people into war. They're not the real problem. The real problem are those of us who go along. So don't go along. All right, just don't do it. Do whatever you can do. If you're into healthy food and you want your family to have healthy food, quit buying from these big, huge commercial agribusinesses and agricorps that have all these huge, big chains, and you go buy from the local grocer. Better yet, go to the local farmer's market and start buying some fresh organic stuff and watch your health improve. You know, it can be done, but you are going to have to do it. One of the things that I'm really kind of fighting against, and a lot of people are waking up to, is the fact that we do not need a nanny government. We don't need some government that's going to tell us how to live and what to do and where to live and how to live, okay? We need to start taking responsibility on our own. And then we have to see that our neighbors are informed, educated, and that they start taking responsibility for their actions too. It's not rocket science, and it can be done.
Second question, Billy.
Yeah. Well, in quick response to what you just said, sometimes I get so overwhelmed by the control system as I hear it that sometimes I feel like, no, just get off the grid, find some place in the wilderness and get away. Because that's, but at any rate,
well, hey, Billy, that may be what you need to do to act as an example to other people. Show them they can get off the grid. I know people who are off the grid and who have solar homes and who are running their homes on hydrogen, and it can be done, but you just have to do it.
Right.
Thank you. I was going to say, thank you, Billy. Be safe out there on the road.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Billy.
And, sure.
Have a good night.
Dirty side down.
Absolutely. Billy, you should see some of his tweets that he does. Absolutely. Oh, man. That's a smart guy right there. I have solar power. We have solar power on our house, too. And, part of it is about the environment, but part of it is, your checkbook, too, every single month.
Part of it is trying to cut those huge energy bills.
No doubt about it. Okay, a couple of questions really quick that I wanted to get in here from some listeners. And we had a bunch of calls that were coming in with Billy. Just go ahead and call back. We kind of answered this earlier, but this comes in from Demi, and he says, all of these people that built up and took over, isn't China working on the same plan on a bigger and long-term scale?
Yeah, but they're playing it smart. You see, other nations have tried to take over by the sword and the gun. The Nazis thought they could conquer the world by just with their Panzer tanks and their modern weaponry. The Chinese, they've been there a long time, and they're pretty sophisticated, and they're just slowly buying up this country. And our so-called leadership is selling out to them. They need more money. They need China to buy more bonds. They just sell more infrastructure. I think if everyone listening would see a list of American or North American assets that are now owned or controlled by the Chinese, they'd freak out. Because, and I've tried to tell people that one of these days when a Chinese person shows up at your door, it's not going to be a soldier with a gun saying we're occupying your country. It's going to be a guy in a business suit with a piece of paper saying, I own your property. You're going to have to leave.
It's scary. They've already bought up all of Vancouver. Hi, we got another call. You are live with Jim Mars on Fade to Black. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's Walter from Sacramento.
Oh, Walter. Hey, now, Jim, you met Walter at Contact in the Desert, took a bunch of pictures with him. And, yeah, so say hi to Walter.
Hi, Walter.
Hi, Jim. I've been reading your book, The Sisterhood of the Rose, and it's fantastic.
Oh, cool. I didn't know. You and my mother, I think, are the ones that read that. But I'll tell you what, to give it a plug, and Sisterhood of the Rose is a book I did with a woman who claims to have had all this as a past life. Now, whether that's true or not, I have no idea, but it's a great story. And so I rolled it into what I call a work of faction. It's fact-based fiction. And in there, one of the main story themes is how that this sisterhood that was formed of women during World War II over in Europe tried desperately to keep the Nazis from acquiring Solomon's treasure, the greatest treasure in the history of the world. Not only a treasure of gold and silver and precious stones, but of ancient knowledge.
Walter, a quick question for Jim. I know that you've got 100, so bust one out.
A few. Okay, Jim, I don't know if you covered this in one of your books before, but Hitler and Eva Braun flee to Argentina, and the speculation is that they had children while they were there. What of the children, and what of their protected lineage, if any?
Well, I think probably Harry Cooper may have covered that, but because he seems to be right on top of that. Like I said earlier in the program, I do believe that Hitler and Eva basically escaped for a time, and apparently there were some children born. But the cover-up of Hitler's escape and life after the war has been so heavily edited and blanked out that any chance of trying to find his heirs is, unless somebody comes forward, is probably very negligible. But apparently he had 2 daughters.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Is that what you heard?
I had heard that it was a boy and a girl, and it was speculation, but I found it very interesting because I have a 5-year-old girl myself, and I was drawn to the idea of the children and what may have happened to them.
Right. Well, I'm not going to tell you that it was 2 girls. It may have been a boy and a girl, but that's what I say. The proof and the documentation of all of that is beyond scanty. It's just almost non-existent. And so there's lots of rumors, lots of stories. One is that Eva Braun gave birth to a daughter, I believe it was, even before they left Germany and even before the end of the war, but it was all kept secret, just like her liaison with Hitler was kept secret until right there at the very end when they got married. And then, according to the reports, and I believe this might have been in Harry Cooper's book, that there was another child born to her after they had left Germany. But now, I'm not the one you need to ask about that because that's getting into more detail than I've gotten into.
Hey, Walter, somebody just tweeted that Donald Trump is Hitler and Eva Braun's son. There's something to that, I think, actually. All right.
That would be a scary thought.
Yeah. Hitler. Walter, one more question?
One more question. What is the best and current research that Jim knows about concerning monoatomic gold currently?
Ooh. That's a good one. That's another one I haven't kept up with as well as I should have because I've been looking at other things. But I do want to say this. If you will Google up monatomic gold, you're going to find a lot of websites that'll talk about it. And I'm here to tell you, be very, very cautious, all right, because there's people out there claiming that they're making it or they found some or they've got it, and then if you're going to do this, this, and this, and this, and just like every other endeavor, some of them are flaky, some of them are hoaxes, some of them are just con men. But there are some legitimate sources out there, and just right here off the top of my head, I can't nor would I try to tell you these are good and these are bad, but I'm just saying go and study that subject on your own and study it in depth and look at everybody and then decide for yourself what seems to be the correct course to take.
There you go.
Thanks, Jeff.
I have never, in all of my research, and it's been very limited, but I have tried to even find out, nobody really even, there isn't a consistent definition what monatomic gold actually is. You know what I mean? I
well, they know what it is. I think that what they don't know is the exact precise formula for creating it. They have been able to take these monatomic elements, orbitally rearranged monatomic elements. That's it, ORME. They've been able to take those and convert them into a solid piece of gold, and they can reduce the piece of gold to this fine white powder.
Right.
But now exactly how all that works is they're kind of kept that to themselves, and that's been the big question all through the centuries. The ancient alchemists, were they knew something was going on. They knew they could transmute gold. It's come down to us as just the old story about they tried to turn lead into gold. But actually, if you read some of the real alchemists, they even say that their philosopher's stone is actually a very fine white powder. So I think they were experimenting with this white powder, and occasionally were able to produce it, but it never quite got to the stage of where it got written down and somebody's tested it and they put it in the lab and they know how to replicate it and duplicate it, although I think they may be doing that now, but it's not been made public.
There you go. Thank you, Walter. All the best, my brother.
Thanks, guys.
Walter from Sacramento. And I got to tell you, Walter and I, when we were out of contact in the desert, Walter and Rick and Spaceboy and I, we went back and we talked in my hotel room one night when we went late. And I got to tell you, it was one of the cool evenings to hang out. See, this is the thing, Jim, with this show, and this kind of goes back to what Billy was saying, Billy the truck driver. What can we do? Well, one of the things we can do is exactly what you and I are doing right now on this show. And that is certainly something that the media and the government doesn't have any control on. I don't have anybody walking into the studio telling me what to say and who to talk to. And they don't have that control. And so the ability for us to share knowledge like this so freely out around the world right now, thousands and thousands of listeners and being able to listen to minds like yourself freely is exactly what they fear the most. And that is one of the things you can do is share knowledge. And that's what the show is about. And going and hanging out, I'm looking at a picture that was just tweeted of you, Walter, and myself actually at Contact in the Desert. Pretty funny. It is for me to sit down with listeners, to meet them face to face and sit down and discuss things is a brilliant thing. And I don't think we had that on this scale even 20, 30 years ago with normal radio broadcast.
No.
And yeah, exactly. And for you to interface also with everybody, you're able to go out and meet people firsthand. And you do that quite often. Where are you speaking next, by the way?
Where am I speaking next? Well, I really don't have anything much scheduled for the rest of the year because I'm still trying to put the finishing touches on this new book.
Okay.
So it'll probably be next year before I get out and about again.
I thought I read something. I thought I saw something somewhere that you were doing something, which was when you and I were trying to talk this week. I thought that you were actually out at a symposium somewhere. But okay. Now I've gotten 100 tweets on this, and so we need to backpedal one more time and discuss Highjump. And Highjump is something that for some reason with the listeners of this program constantly ask about. We want to talk about Highjump. We want information. We want the inside story. And so you're on the program right now, and I've got to go back and visit this. So what exactly, define Highjump for us? Let's start there. And before we get to the bottom of the hour, let's see if we can get some questions answered.
Yeah, well, that would probably take a whole program in itself. But basically, there's a lot of evidence that there was a lot of stuff missing from Nazi Germany. Thing you have to understand is that when the Germans surrendered at that schoolhouse in Reims, there was nobody there representing the Nazi Party. It was the German military that surrendered, okay? Excuse me. And so the Nazis just moved. They took off. They went to various places, largely with the help of Vatican passports. And one of the places that they went in great droves, in addition to Operation Paperclip and here, was Argentina. And then perhaps even further south into Antarctica, where back in the late 30s, a German expedition had carved out a huge expanse of territory called Neuschwabenland. And they reportedly found caves and ice-covered valleys where there were warm springs, and they actually could set up a whole little colony down there. And I think that initially that they probably did, but as I said earlier in the program, and maybe I didn't make this clear, is that as they expanded their world corporate network, then who wants to live under the ice in Antarctica when you can live on the Riviera or in a penthouse in New York City? So as they got legit and got more and more control through the business and corporate circles, I think the base in Antarctica eventually was shut down. But in 1947, it was still there. That's just, not very long after the war ended. The war ended for us with the bombing of Japan in August 1945. So you got 1 year and a month or so. And that it was still very, very prominent in everyone's mind. And I think that people in the military and in political circles realized that Hitler may have got away and that they had this colony in Antarctica. And I think they wanted to put the final death thrust into the Nazis by going down there and locating this base and taking it out. So in January, I think it was, of 1947, they mounted this huge fleet. It was including some ships capable of launching aircraft and some big transports and a few thousand men. And they set off on, supposedly, officially, it was a scientific expedition. But here's the thing. Britain was on its knees economically because of the war. France was, having huge internal problems with the Gaulls, people fighting the communists. And America was war weary. Everybody was tired of having tires rationed, and everybody was so exultant about the end of the war that they did not want to tell everybody, well, sorry, the war's not over. We got to keep fighting the Nazis. So it was all top secret. Well, they go down there, and there's been various reports, some of them really outlandishly far out, like they discovered these underground tunnels and there were fights with alien type equipment and blah, blah, unlike that. But the fact of the matter is that something happened untoward down there because they lost some aircraft, reportedly to bad weather. They lost some people. And even though they were equipped for like 9 months, they were there less than 2 months and they came home. And Admiral Byrd, who was in charge of that, when he stopped in South America to refuel and on his way back to the United States. I have a copy of the newspaper clipping where he was warning people. He said, the next war, we're going to be facing flying machines that can fly from one pole to the other in a matter of minutes. So I think he was trying to tell us that the Nazis had developed this extremely futuristic technology and that we were in big trouble. But, of course, by the time he got back here to the United States, they put the muzzle on him, and they doctored photographs. I've seen those, too, where there are obviously these saucer-shaped objects in the sky. And when I've seen the actual photograph, and then when you see it reproduced in the book, they've all been painted out, and it just says Bird's Base Camp or something like that.
Right. We published those last night.
Yeah. And so they, I'm sure being a military man, it was easy enough to order him to be quiet. And that's why there's just been basically controversy and no real acknowledgement as to what actually happened in Operation Highjump.
Yeah, I'm reading his. Okay, check this out. It says, his warning. Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today that the United States should adopt measures of protection against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile planes coming from the polar regions.
Yep.
The Admiral explains that he was not trying to scare anyone, but the cruel reality is that the case of a new war, the United States would be attacked by planes flying over one or both poles. The statement was made as a part of a recapital. I can't even say the word; it's too big.
Recapitalization.
There's no Jean in it of the polar experience. In the exclusive interview with
encapsulating.
Yeah. There you go. In an exclusive interview with the International News Service, talking about the recently completed expedition, Byrd said that the most important result of his observations and discoveries is the potential effect that they have in relation to the security of the United States. The fantastic speed in which the world is shrinking, recall the Admiral, is one of the most important lessons learned during his recent Antarctic exploration. I have to warn my compatriots that the time has ended when we were able to take refuge in our isolation and rely on the certainty that the distances, the oceans, and the poles were a guarantee of safety. So, what is it? What did he see? Yeah. What did he find?
And that was an interview with who?
International News Corporation.
Okay. Now, he obviously, to me, those statements that you just read, he was being extremely guarded into what he was saying. And yet he was trying in his own way without giving away anything. He was under military orders, and I'm sure the last thing they wanted was for him to come back and say the Nazis are still a threat. So he couldn't say that, but in a roundabout way, he certainly acknowledged that we were in danger of a hostile power that had incredible aerial machines, right? Isn't that what you got out of it?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is they went down there. Task Force 68 was like 5,000 guys.
Yeah.
13 ships. Why would you go down there with a force? I mean, that's a force.
That's a force. That's not a scientific expedition.
No. And yeah, I still, something happened down there. They went down there with bad intentions. They had to face somebody. And was it?
And they had losses.
Oh, they had huge losses. They had, let me see here. Check this out. I'm just reading. These are the facts. On December 30th, 1946, aviation radioman Wendell Henderson, Frederick Williams, and Ensign Maxwell Lopez were killed when their PBM Mariner George I crashed during a blizzard. The surviving 6 crew members, including blah, 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 blah.
Might have been a blizzard of 50 caliber slug. Who knows?
Yeah. And that was the beginning. Then they had the ship unloading incident, December 30th, 1946. Something went on down there. Something went on. I just wish.
Have you ever been in the military? Jimmy?
No, my father was in the military.
Right.
I'm
well,
an
I
Army
was in the
brat.
military, and I'll tell you this. If this was a military operation, particularly the Army, and they had an accident, are they going to cancel their mission? No.
So
something very untoward went on.
Yeah, and what do you think the bottom line was with Highjump? I mean, what's the bottom line? Because they went back, they did a second expedition. I think it was called Windmill. I could be wrong on that. But why did they feel the need to go back with Windmill? Something happened in Highjump. So what was the bottom line with Highjump with Byrd when he came back? What do you think? Do you think it was a Nazi base that they encountered? Was that?
I think so. And I think they encountered the Habanus, the flying saucers, the flying disc, maybe even the Feuerball, the little glowing ball things and stuff. And yet, now let me quickly point out here and add this caveat. I'm not trying to say that every flying saucer during World War II was a Nazi design. In fact, the Nazi pilots, as well as Japanese pilots, all reported seeing these discs flying around in these little golden balls that would follow and chase and cavort around their aircraft. So it was not, at the time, it was kind of kept secret because we thought it was a secret Nazi weapon. The Nazis thought it was one of our secret weapons. The Japanese thought it was somebody's secret weapons, and so nobody was talking about it. But after the war, when you put all this together, you realize that, yes, the Nazis had some very futuristic stuff that they were testing and that they were beginning to bring into operation. But there was also a foreign alien aspect, okay? Something was going on there.
Well, who do we, when you were talking about the rise of the Fourth Reich, is that...
That's us.
Yeah, you think the rise of the Fourth Reich is the United States, and is it directly...
Well, like with most politicians, you can't trust anything they say. You have to just watch what they do. And same thing with countries. Now, right now, they're trying to drum us up into a war with Russia and saying Russia's trying to invade the Ukraine. What are they talking about? The Ukraine's been part of Russia, all the way back into the Tsarist days. That would be like saying that somebody got hold of the state government in Austin, declared Texas a republic, and when the United States tried to say you can't do that, then is the United States invading Texas? It's all screwy. So you have to look at countries, but not based on what the political rhetoric is, but based on the events, on circumstances, which you can't change. What I'm getting at is that we went through the Cold War, and Russia troops occupied Eastern Europe, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. There they are. The communist, the Iron Curtain. Okay, and then when communism collapsed under its own weight and lack of inertia, because social programs can never last indefinitely, the Russians said, okay, look, you beat us fair and square. We're out of money, so we're going to stop this Cold War. Now we're going to just withdraw our troops from Eastern Europe if you, meaning us, the United States and England, if you and NATO promise you will not expand NATO. And we agreed to it, okay? So what did they do? Did we push the Russian troops out of Eastern Europe? No. They just got up and went home. All right? And what did we do? We started pushing and bringing those nations into NATO and putting missiles in those countries. No wonder the Russians are upset. Now, who's the bad guy?
Well, how much time does the United States have left? All the great empires, it doesn't matter who you want to, every single one came to an end.
Right.
Egypt came to an end. The Roman Empire came to an end. Everything, the Third Reich came to an end. Everything that started ended. The United States has been running pretty strong here for a long time, and we are on top of our game at the moment.
Well, yeah, but, we do have modern technology which speeds everything up. Hitler's 1,000-year Reich toppled after only 12 years, but then that's because 26 nations ganged up on them, and said, we got to put a stop to that. The Roman Empire, on the other hand, lasted about 2,000 years. and some others lasted a lot longer, but then technology was slower. We've been here a little over 200 years, and we are certainly seem to be losing the zealousness for freedom and liberty that created this country in the first place. So how long it's going to take for it to decay from within and then crumble is anybody's guess. But I don't think we're going to have the long time span that some of these other empires have had, because we have technology today that is hastening everything.
So, okay, are you saying that we can keep this indefinitely?
No, that's what I'm saying. It can't keep going the way it is very much longer. And if nothing else, simply look at what the federal government's doing. Why does the Agriculture Department need weapons with hollow point, tons of hollow point ammunition? Why is the mail service getting ordering rifles? And why do they have this Pentagon program 1033 where they're handing out military equipment to the police forces in this country and building those fusion centers where they're trying to tell them that if you talk about the Constitution or claim to be a patriot, you're a potential terrorist? Okay, they're getting ready to clamp down because they know that it's all going to go up.
What about learning from the past, though?
Nobody seems to learn from the past. I swear, Jimmy, I think you and I are the only ones that remember anything that happened past 2001.
Well,
and most people haven't. Most people don't even know what really happened there.
Well, you have this is what's frightening for me. You have the recent history of the Soviet Union, which collapsed. Mm-hmm. You have obviously what went on World War II, World War I. You can back up before that. You have Spain, you have Portugal, you have the United Kingdom.
Spanish-American War.
All of the imperialism and expansionism.
If you took a straw poll of your listeners tonight, I bet you hardly any of them remember or know that we sent American troops and fought a war in the Philippines.
Right. Yes. Yeah, you're right about that. Well, and
in Cuba.
Yes. And so that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so with all the imperialism and colonization that we had done, or not only us, but all the other countries, everybody else did it too. Yeah. So did Japan.
It wasn't just us.
Yeah. Everybody has done it. Everybody had to backpedal. You think about how strong Portugal was, 200, 300 years ago. That was an insanely strong country.
Right.
Now they've all backpedaled.
Spain too, until they sent their whole armada against England.
Right. Well, look at France. France too as well. France occupied almost all of Africa.
See, and speaking of France, that's something a lot of people know. They think the Russians are paranoid, and the Russians they just don't understand we want to be their friends, and they're bellicose and blah, blah, blah. They don't realize Russia has been attacked 3 times in the last couple of 100 years, okay?
Yes.
Twice by Napoleon, once by Hitler.
Right.
And all those instances after they signed peace treaties and made pledges of peace.
Well, you learn
no wonder they get a little paranoid.
You can learn all of those lessons. Just play the game Risk and try to take over the Soviet Union.
Yeah, really.
So
it never works.
No, it never works. It never works. You learn. But
that's the same thing. I don't understand why that we think we can do any good in Afghanistan. The Mongols tried to conquer Afghanistan, and they couldn't, and the Russians tried to go in there, and the British, and they couldn't. Why do we think we're going to be able to go in there and do anything?
And the one country. Well, if you look at how Spain and Portugal and the United Kingdom have all backpedaled, and Japan certainly was forced into backpedaling, and all of their expansionism. But the one country that has been kind of quiet and just plugged along has been China. And it's so, and
moving right along.
Yeah, and everything is so cyclical when you look at different empires, how they've come and gone, and we have been riding this wave for quite a long time now. But there's no way 1,000 years from now, we're going to look back and the United States is going to be the same 1,000 years from now as it is today.
I don't think it's going to be the same 5 years from now.
Really? You think it's going to be that quick?
Hey, just look at what's happened just since 9/11. The whole complexion of this country has changed.
But
and most importantly, or most critically, or most scary, is that, you go back to World War II, and there's lots of problems in this country, segregation being one of them.
Right.
And yet, when there was a real threat of enemy attack, President of the United States and our other leaders get up and say it's time to pull together. Doesn't matter your religion, your race, doesn't matter. We're all Americans. We're all in this together. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's unite. Let's agree to disagree, and then they all agree that we're going to win the war. And our parents and grandparents, of all stripes, got together, and they won a world war in like 4 years or less. And here we've been plugging along on the war on terror now for 13 years, I guess, and it's still going on. It's absolutely amazing. And look at our leaderships today. Be afraid. Be very afraid. It's terror alert today. It's terror alert orange. I'm down here in rural Texas. What am I supposed to do? Go into a karate stance and, get ready to beat up on somebody because there's a terrorist lurking behind every bush? They build fear, and they build discontent, and they build conflict between the races, the religions, even the sexes. It's man versus woman, and homosexual versus heterosexual, and anything they can do to divide and conquer.
And make money. Let's take
make money in the process.
Let's take one last call. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black with Jim Mars and Jimmy Church. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
This is Danny Holzhauser from New Orleans.
Danny from New Orleans. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing great. I love listening to Mr. Mars and you, Jimmy Church.
Thank you, sir. What have you got for Mr. Mars?
I was just listening to everything that he was saying, and I mean, you can turn on Fox News or CNN and see exactly what he's saying. With the border opening up, they're trying to scare us with that. With the ISIS, they're trying to scare us with that. They're trying to get us to go to war. All I heard tonight on the news was, we need to be in Iraq. We need to go. We need to drop bombs. We need to do. It's just all this scaring and fear mongering, and it's just crazy. But I wanted to ask Mr. Mars if I've seen a few police sheriffs on YouTube that have been resisting this military equipment that they use, like we saw in Ferguson. They've refused the equipment. Police sheriffs, the highest level sheriffs in the police department, and they say they're doing that because they believe that if they take the equipment, that it's going to let them go and make them go. They would be under federal control. Do you think there's any truth to that, Mr. Mars?
I think there's absolute truth to that. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And when the government starts giving you millions of dollars worth of equipment and propping up your intelligence services and before long they'll be telling you exactly what to do. It's happened in education. It's happened in energy. They come in, they say, we got to regulate this. Okay, sounds reasonable. Next thing you know, they're dictating policy to you. This is how the power in this country has slowly been taken away from the individuals, citizens, and local authorities and handed to the federal authorities. I'll give you a great example. There's a county in Hawaii that locally passed an ordinance requiring the labeling of genetically modified organisms and pesticides, okay, and particularly around schools and hospitals and old folks' homes. And they didn't ban it. They just said, we want to know when you're doing this, and we want to see that there's some safety measures taken. Now, that sounds very right and reasonable, and is based on what the majority of the citizens at that place wanted. But a federal judge said, no, you can't do that. And they've thrown out that law because they said federal law supersedes it. So in other words, if Monsanto goes and buys a few senators, which they have, and they get a law passed that exempts them from any liability due to their GMO crops, which they have, well, then they're sitting pretty, and all they have to do is control the federal government, and anything we do at a local level just doesn't count. And folks, that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Thank you, Danny. Right. Do you have anything else real quick?
Well, I'm a first-time caller, Jimmy. I'd love a book from Mr. Morris.
You want that book, don't you?
Yeah,
this is what I want you. This is what I want you to do. I've already made the notes here. Email Rita right now and give her your address, and we'll get this book out to you. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Morris, it's an honor to talk to you, Jimmy. It's been an honor to be with you on your show, listening to your show since January, since you first came on. And everybody have a great night.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. You have a good night.
Okay.
You know, that's one of the things, Jim. This show has grown like it's out of control, and it's guests like you that coming on. I don't have questions in front of me. You know that you've been on the show, and you and I have hung out. You know how I do.
We don't have a script.
No, we don't have a script, and it's the honesty of this show. Listeners are able to come in and just hear a guy, me. I'm just a guy. I'm just a dude.
Just talking to another guy.
Just talking to another guy.
Just a guy, too. In fact, but I'll tell you something that I found in my journalism career is that people respond to truth, okay? They do respond to it, and they tend to intuitively know it when they hear it. Now, please understand, I'm not asking for anybody's belief. Listen carefully. Don't believe me, but listen to me, and then go check it out for yourself. Google up those stories. Google up those quotes. Find out, did they really say that? Did that really happen? And when you find out, yes, they did, then it's no longer a question. Do you trust Jim Mars? You know it. You know it for yourself. It's called education with a small e.
I wanted to touch upon this earlier. You had brought this up, and this is the thing. When obviously fear drives everything, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's food, it's the tires on your car, it's the invasion of another country, it's terrorism, whatever it is, it's always fear, always fear.
You got to buy this, or you might not get a date Friday night.
Right. No matter what it is. And when we started giving up our freedoms here, and I've talked about it on the show, and I want to remind you of this. I would like your opinion, but for me, I used to travel, and I would get on a plane on Sunday night, Monday morning. I'd fly all week long, and I did this for years. And I would come back on Friday night, Saturday night, literally take the clothes out of my suitcase, throw in clean clothes, spend a day with my daughter, get back on a plane, and take off, right? And I did this for years. And then suddenly, and I remember this like it was yesterday, it was Ted Kaczynski. It was the Unabomber that changed things. It wasn't terrorism. It wasn't outside of the United States. It was here among us. And when those bombs were going off around the country, and we didn't know, they had this sketch of the Unabomber that was in all of the newspapers, and suddenly the airports clamped down. There were posters of him. Everybody was looking for this guy. And that's when all of the personal luggage that you were taking on the planes, your computers, everything was getting opened up, everything was getting, that's when it started. And suddenly the lines to check in, it had nothing to, this was years before 9/11.
Right.
And it was that fear inside of the United States. One of our own was bombing, somebody here in the United States. That fear is when, and suddenly everybody, I wasn't okay with it. I wasn't. I remember I was totally offended. It happened to me. I was at an airport in Sacramento coming back to Burbank, and suddenly I had to open up my carry-on luggage, and I'm watching this lady go through my personal stuff, and I lost it. They had to bring a supervisor over and calm me down, and I was like, this is the United States. I'm not giving this up, but I had to. And the fear that they put into all of us, suddenly I watched it happen. Everybody was offended that first week, but like a week later.
I still am.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I spent most of my life in the Free Republic, okay?
Right.
Now, hey, I'm not correcting you because everything you said is correct, but let's go back even further and find out who really started all this. And I know this because I lived through it and reported on it all. You go back to when Castro took over Cuba. And he had been our friend, okay? In fact, I remember in high school, the big deal was the dream of the young guys was to go to Cuba and fight with Castro against the evil dictator Batista, but then when he won and took over with the help of the CIA, he began to nationalize everything, and he tossed the mafia off the island, and all of a sudden he's a communist. Okay, and we blockaded the island, put him into isolation, thinking he'd drive and blow away. But instead, he turned to the only people that would deal with him, which was the Russians. And we saw what happened there, okay, and that led to the Cuban Missile Crisis. But anyway, what happened was then is that the people, a lot of Cubans, got disenchanted with Castro, so they would hijack airplanes and fly them to the United States. Now, right then, we should have said, and I was saying this at the time, we should treat them as who they were, air pirates, hijackers. And we could say, well, we sympathize with you and your views against Castro, but you're an air pilot, and send them back to stand trial or make them stand trial here. But we didn't. We allowed them in, and we gave them political sanctuary because they were against Castro. And so then a few years later, some of these Cubans got disenchanted with the United States. I guess they got tired of waiting tables or something. And they started hijacking planes and having them flown back to Cuba. And at that point, we just went ballistic and said, well, you're just hijackers, yada, yada. And that's when they started installing all of this security stuff, metal detectors and everything else in the airports. And then, like you said, with the Unabomber, it even gained more speed. And then, of course, with 9/11, it just went rocket speed.
One last question, then I'm going to let you.
And I gotta ask you this.
Yeah.
For all this TSA groping and all the inconvenience and all the lines and all the waiting and all the machines, how many terrorists has the TSA caught?
None. Well,
None.
no. Well, we had that.
None.
What about the? No, we didn't even catch the underwear bomber. That guy got on the plane, didn't he? And then we had the tennis shoe bomber guy. He got on the plane.
Yeah, but the TSA didn't stop him.
No, that's right. You're right.
And besides that, by the way, this explosive he had in his shoe was kind of a plastic type explosion, kind of like C4 or whatever. And I've had people in the military who are familiar with all of that. I can't right now think what the technical name was that stuff he had, but what I know for certain is that he could not set it on fire. It was like C4. You had to have a blasting cap, and he didn't have one. So it was all a charade. They put the guy on the airplane. They knew what was going to happen. It was a set-up, staged event, and they knew there was no real danger because even though he had real explosives, he didn't have a detonator.
We just posted a meme for you, by the way. It says Jim Mars for president. So I'm just
please don't do that. I value my life.
I could see you on K Street.
That's another thing. Fortunately, I think things are changing. I think what we're seeing here, and of course, it's not being covered like this in the media. They're still trying to say it's us versus the Russians, blah, blah, blah. But I want to tell you what it is Russia, China, and some of these other countries, the BRIC nations, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Brazil, India, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they have been forming together. They are forming their own World Bank, okay? and they're going to offer loans to these other countries to start counteracting the imperialism of the United States. They're going to be putting out currencies backed by gold, which is going to really damage the U.S. dollar. There is a underground revolt going on in the world against us.
Thank you for coming on tonight. I don't know what I could talk to you. This could be the Jim and Jimmy show, and we could do this every single night. It's just
hey, we can make it into a movie. We could call it the Screen Gems.
The Screen Gems. I love it. I love it. Thank you for coming on. I'll talk to you over the weekend. I want you to be safe. And there was one. You know what? This came in from Renee. Let me squeeze this in really quick, and you can answer it very simply. Have you ever been threatened with everything with JFK and the New World Order and everything else? Have you ever had a direct threat?
Yes.
Is that right?
That's the short answer.
Okay. All right.
But it would take too long to explain all that. And then, in a general sense, though, I've had books canceled mysteriously and censored, and I've had censorship placed on me, and I've had a lot of pressure to do this or not do that. But no, not really. I only had one time when I was directly physically threatened, and that was by a gangster, and I knew he was, and so, what the heck.
Well, you make Texas proud, my friend. All right?
Well, thank you, Jimmy. Y'all, everyone take care.
You just have a great night. Be safe. I'll talk to you over the weekend. Thank you, Jim.
Adios.
Jim Mars, everybody. Thank you. Wow, wow, wow. Oh, man. I'm worn out. I did, by the way, I tried to keep up with everything on Twitter tonight. It was absolutely overwhelming on Twitter. I tried to get everything in, and if I missed it, I apologize, but I really did the best that I could. But Moonchild, Marilyn, I got you in at the end, and let's just say, all right, he does make Texas proud. And congratulations to Danny for winning the autographed book. Walter, Billy, Michael Anderson got in from Indy tonight, and I think we got everything in. And Eugene, we got Highjump in, and I did it just for you. All right. What's this? Michael Anderson, woohoo! Tracy Lords just accepted me at Tracy. Oh no! Oh no! I can't even believe that. That just made Twitter. But look. Eugene, absolutely love Jim Mars. Love to get him back. Walter, Leslie, Michael, Gene, Liam. With everybody, it's just Jim Mars is Jim Mars, and I hope he didn't disappoint everybody tonight. And for me, please understand, for me, it's just a joy. It's easy. I'm just able to sit here and freely talk to Jim Mars. I did want to say this really quick before I get out of here. I did email Art again today and begged him to come on this show. I am so close to publishing his email and having everybody out there write him. His response was, "Hey Jimmy, man, it's all good, man, but it's not going to happen right now." I'm like, dude, you can't do that. You can't. So upset about that. And I'm just letting you know, his email came in right as we were signing on the air tonight. Unbelievable. Keith and I are busting hump. Least Art can do is come on this show. Nori came on this show. The least Art can do is come on this show. Thank you, Jim Mars. You are the best. Jim Mars for president. Thank you to everybody that called in tonight. Stay tuned. Coming up next is After Hours AM. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Show produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers right now are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar, but we've got a surprise for you tomorrow. We got a new announcer, and it's a fade or not. Music is this guy, Doug Aldrich. That's right. Show intros performed by Space Boy. The new skull logo, that's Cheryl Lynn, by the way. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your humble host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night is Fader Nights. Your calls all night. And I am out of here.